And I think we're finally live. What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Took a second for the stream to get going there. Not sure if you were staring at me, not saying anything, looking back and forth all side-eyed. But we're here. Finally got the indication that we're live. Everybody's already in the chat hanging out. We got 20 people to start things off here. 4:04, so we're getting started a little bit late for us, but we'll get through it. 8 gamer on deck today. Screen's up and live with the all the data and the dashboard. That's the word I'm struggling for. We'll dive right into the slate today. Let's take a quick minute to say hi to everybody. Cujo is here. Cujo is the second one in the door behind Clintwood today. Clintwood's back, finally back to the regular schedule, off Sunday, Monday, Tuesday again. Good to see you, buddy. Welcome back. Andy Melman's here. Anthony Taylor's here. Congratulations to Lone Wolf, as Anthony Taylor says. Lone Wolf with a nice little hit over the weekend. It was a good weekend. Saw a couple other decent results in the chat. So good weekend for the Discord. Hopefully everybody took some stuff down. Kiefer Easterlin's here. Happy Monday. Fade Skeens. Am I crazy? I mean, you could definitely work your way around Skeens if you want to. He's obviously very, very high priced, but I don't think there's any like skill matchup or deficit of points kind of a reason to fade Paul Skeens. It's going to be popular, even at the high price, but just totally worth it. We'll get to it. Matthew Patterson's here. Who have I not said hi to? Milner says Rock is here. Dimitri, Travis Wyndham, Tizzle Main, Stephen Leibowitz. Everybody's here. Let's get into this thing. Runs last updated a little while ago. If anything changed, I don't think it's any big movement yet. No major pieces right now anyway that are like imminent on this slate to be moved at the trade deadline. I mean, obviously anything and everything could happen. But we already saw Tommy Pham get traded this afternoon, so he won't be in the White Sox lineup. We already took care of that. Jack Flaherty got scratched from his start, but that's not on this slate. That's earlier today. He's probably going to be on the move, but we don't have any actual destination yet. Basically, they're saying we just didn't think it was right to start him when we're about to move him out. But we'll see what happens. We've got a handful of lineups in. So top of the board here, the Mariners at the Red Sox, a 4.18 implied total on the Seattle side, 4.41 implied total for Boston. Solid hitting conditions just abound in Fenway, especially at this point during the summer in a lot of seasons. And this year it's definitely been playing like a very high-end hitting environment for most of these. This total's lower than the last couple of games there, or the last couple of weeks of games at Fenway have been at 8.5 implied runs. But it's a decent enough to playable total on both sides for the Mariners and the Red Sox. They rank out fairly high. There's some interesting bats, at least on the Red Sox side, and then there's some cheap playability on the Mariners side. The reason the run total's low, though, and I think it's going to lead to a true four corners breakdown when we get to it, it's Nick Pivetta on the mound for the Red Sox, Logan Gilbert going for the Mariners. So a couple high-end pitchers there. Could definitely see success from any one of those four corners, but we'll get into what we prefer. Another game with an 8.5 run total, Minnesota at the Mets. Jose Quintana on the mound for the Mets and Simeon Woods Richardson. Two guys who can break off effective starts from time to time. We just saw Quintana against the Yankees. He went 5, gave up just 1 earned, 3 hits, struck out 6 in what was a spot we were saying, like, it wouldn't surprise me if he had a decent day. The only thing that hampered his DFS upside a little bit was 5 walks, which is problematic. But capable of getting there against a dangerous Twins team. And then Woods Richardson, same thing, capable of getting there, capable of giving up some runs, but it probably just a handful of runs. So I feel like these Vegas totals are right in line. Between 4 and 5 runs on either side is definitely in play, but either pitcher on a good day could get through these teams. Less so in the next matchup. Carson Spears going for the hometown Reds against Jameson Taillon. Don't really want to tangle with that ballpark. 9.5 run total on the board, even up in Vegas, 4.80 on either side. Looks like a spot to source some bats. Texas at the Cards, 8.5 run total in that one. Another very close game on the Vegas board, a 4.32 implied total for the Rangers, 4.27 on the Cardinal side. It's Andre Palante going against Nathan Eovaldi. Eovaldi for the Rangers. Prefer him if we're looking for pitching in that one, and I think he could potentially sneak through at maybe a little bit of underappreciation. So we'll give him a look at price and in the matchup. Colin Ray going for the Brewers in the next game, pushing some home run upside toward the Braves. But you can see a pretty manageable total. 3.97 implied total for that scuffling Braves team. Not a monster spot stacks-wise. They land in the middle of the board overall as far as a stack, but they lead the power index against Colin Ray, who, to his credit, in 3 of his last 4 starts, hasn't given up a home run. Typically, he's a little bit targetable for power, including throughout this season. But overall, he's been effective enough. He had 5-inning shutout against the Cubbies his last time out. Give up 4 hits, but struck out 8, walked 2, no runs allowed. Not a bad outing over 5. Pirates and the Astros. We mentioned Paul Skeens already. Sorry, I skipped over. It's Grant Holmes on the other side of that going for Atlanta. So an interesting spot for Brewers. Bats 4.12 implied total for the Brewers. No Christian Yelich obviously downgrades that lineup, but they're still interesting, and especially for DFS purposes, if people start to look away from them a little bit, maybe they stay frisky against a gettable enough pitcher. And he's cost 4,000 on the DraftKings slate, so we'll talk about him. It's Jake Bloss on the mound for the Astros. 3.97 implied total on the other side for the Pirates. They're a reasonably okay team from that mid-range of cheap teams that nobody really plays that much. There's some interesting enough bats to throw at Jake Bloss, who is not overly high-end. And then, as I was saying, Paul Skeens, somebody mentioned him already, but coming off the top, highest projected pitcher on the slate, I believe, and with good cause. He's gone at least 7 in his last 3 starts, went 8 1/3 his first shot at a complete game. Didn't quite get there in the last one. That was against the Cards. He gave up 2 runs on 4 hits, struck out 8 in that one, and again, 8 1/3. Giving you incredible depth now, too, and starting to get buzz in that could he possibly in a half or 3/4 of a season pull off a Cy Young Award kind of conversation. I don't think he should, but it's being talked about. Royals and the White Sox, the biggest total on the board, 5.41 for the Royals, going up against the incredibly lousy Chris Flexen. We had a good chuckle at his Stuff Plus numbers the other day when we were talking about him in a different matchup. We'll get to that. Alec Marsh going for the Royals. No great shakes on the mound for Kansas City either. Chicago pulling a 4.20 implied total against. It's one of the better marks we see them with. Typically, they're just going to check in under 4 regardless of who's on the mound. So maybe a day to consider a couple of frisky White Sox bats, but no Tommy Pham now maybe diminishes that lineup even further. We'll see if Lubob gets dealt at the deadline. He's a big piece on the deadline over the next 24 hours, so going to be an interesting day. Justin Turner to the Seattle Mariners. That's going to be a disappointing pickup for Mariners fans, I feel like. I don't think that's the one that they got their Rosarena, obviously, but I don't know. Justin Turner 3 years ago. Justin Turner 5 years ago. Different story. This Justin Turner? Yeah. Let me take a sip of coffee. Been just holding that mug and warming my hands. Nats and the Diamondbacks to round things out. Pair of lefties, Mitchell Parker and Jordan Montgomery. Diamondbacks pulling a pretty healthy total, 5+, going up against Parker there. And then, honestly, Montgomery has scuffled his way through the entire season. Even his good games haven't been good DFS games. Kind of surprised the Nats are only at 4.07 implied runs. I could see them creeping up more into the 4.5 kind of territory. So, definitely an interesting spot for bats at the end of the night, and pretty tough to consider those pitchers in this situation. We do have rain to talk about. Looking at Mr. Roth's board. Seattle at Boston, he's got as a potential brief delay, but seems like it's fine. He's got a green on the front side, green/yellow, but green on the front of that. Opposite situation in the Twins-Mets game. Yellow on the front, green on the back of the slash. He's saying this is the more likely of the East Coast games to get delayed, but it seems like we're probably still okay, and it seems like it's just a delay, not a postponement or anything. Cubs at the Reds definitely looks a little bit ugly. He's got it as straight up yellow. Looks like a few showers coming through during the game. But the way he puts it, heavy stuff holding off until after the game. I keep playing. I don't think the heavy stuff's going to come down for a couple more hours. Texas and St. Louis seems okay. Green, yellow on that one. And then the opposite situation in the Kansas City and White Sox game. That one's yellow, green on his board. But he likes them both to play. Minor pop-up issues, but everything should play. You might get delays in some of those spots. But doesn't look like anything tragic to be concerned about. Anybody in the chat have a different take on the weather? Hitting in Seattle will not do Turner any good. Yeah, that's also a good point, Steven, as far as the individual turnaround for him. Anthony Taylor hits it. Hit that like button and subscribe. I appreciate it, buddy, as we get into the game-by-game breakdown here. Also, make sure to check out our pals over at acemind.io. Doing a great job for optimization tools, simulation tools as we get into NFL. I'm going to be back into the Sims really hardcore every week, so really can't wait for that. But acemind.io, promo code rotoscouts all in caps, gets you 20% off your first month when you decide to subscribe after their 3-day free trial. So give it a look if you haven't already. Kid Kobe's here. How's it going? Good to see you. Let's win some money. Couldn't agree more. So, top of the board, Mr. Skeens, it's just a financial and ownership decision. There is absolutely nothing wrong with just taking a gigantic chunk of Paul Skeens off the top. Even in a tougher matchup against the Astros, the kid is just that good. There's just really nothing more to be said other than he is just that good. Deserves that salary even in that matchup. And you're going to be probably walking down the line with, 15% of the field on FanDuel and probably 20 plus on DraftKings, I would say. A slate like this, maybe more. He's just very difficult to reach price-wise, but it's an open enough slate, and there are some decent value spots that I don't think there's going to be any issues going to it. And as usual, I will remind everybody that, typically, he's holy. All right, I had it halved on DK. He's per RG's projections on ownership anyway. They've got him at 50+%, more than half of all lineups on DK. That's a lot. Or excuse me, that's not more than half of all lineups. I guess it's a quarter of all lineups across 2 pitching spots. Whatever. I had it under on FanDuel as well. Wow. Pushing nearly 40%. That's a lot. With it that heavy, I wasn't expecting these ownership numbers to be quite that high, given the pricing. It's not a great pitching slate, obviously. So I do think that contributes to it. But Evaldi, Gilbert, Pivetta up at the top of the board, any one of those 3 guys, especially probably Evaldi, Pivetta, in the matchups, but on talent, probably Logan Gilbert. Any one of those 3 guys could supplant Skeens at the top of the board. So with those guys going a little bit under, and it looks like most specifically Evaldi and Gilbert are going under-owned. Single digits for them, Pivetta in that matchup up into the double digits. And honestly, into the 20s on FanDuel and very high on DraftKings. That creates a situation where it might be wise to consider the undercut on Skeens. Still have some, but even if you cut the field in half, you'll still have a giant chunk of Skeens. So, no issues with the undercut. It's not a fade. There's no just take them out of your pool kind of consideration or anything like that. But I can definitely endorse the undercut at those prices. And then, as we've discussed a bunch of times, it takes whatever chunk of lineups you have there and just puts them on a different path to the entire field, where you're buying bats and you're going value, or you're putting together 2 out of these 3 guys and still spending at pitcher, but not quite as much maybe. So there's a lot of interesting value to be gained by maybe considering that undercut, but still having some. I didn't mean to jump over. Evaldi against St. Louis definitely could succeed for the money. No issues with that one. I think he's one of the top options on the board. And if he's going to be owned in the single digits, I'd be happy to consider him for expensive pitcher shares. Logan Gilbert, again, also going to be probably owned more toward the single digits, while Pivetta picks up a ton of popularity in that 4th spot based on the matchup and the lower pricing, particularly on DK, 8,500. That is a bargain for his talent against that Mariners team. 94 on FanDuel reasonably puts him on the board. Alec Marsh, you can see him succeeding for those prices, especially. He's going to be popular as a value pitcher, probably your top value pitcher of the day, but don't sleep on Simeon Woods Richardson on DraftKings. Saving $1,000 between him and Alec Marsh, I don't have any more faith in Alec Marsh, really, than I do in Simeon Woods Richardson. It's just based on the matchup. The Mets are a much, much better team than the White Sox. But as far as Vegas is concerned, it's a 4.35 versus a 4.20. We're going to get really concerned about a 15th of a run. Doesn't really seem to rattle things as I consider that. So happy to make that pivot for value and save $1,000 there. And that's another spot where you're just by virtue of making a different decision on who your value guy is. And let me jump back to DK because that's where it's really relevant. So, like, in your Skeens lineups, in addition to maybe considering the undercut, instead of, in at least a chunk of them, instead of just going directly to Skeens Marsh and Marsh is owned into the double digits, Woods Richardson is owned half that for $1,000 less, and it's not really a huge difference. You've also got Grant Holmes on that DK slate. He slots in right here for just $4,000. We'll give him a look in a minute. Jameson Taillon, not really in that ballpark. Good enough pitcher to win. Good enough pitcher to give you a decent day, but not a big enough day, I don't think, and there's a lot of downside to pitching against Cincinnati in that ballpark, so I don't love that for 97 on FanDuel, just the way it plays against all of that. And then 81 on DraftKings is more playable, but still kind of a bigger downside, I think, than a lot of the other value plays. Colin Ray could definitely succeed at 6,900 on DraftKings. I think that's another one to consider along the lines of Woods Richardson, where, like, just make a different decision here, go to one of these guys, and you can pick up some value for less money. Definitely some strikeouts in that Braves lineup. There is some home run power showing for Atlanta, and he's a high-danger pitcher, but he's had some days. I have no reason to think that he couldn't succeed here. Quintana, just not appropriately priced on FanDuel, really. 8,600. Needs to have his optimal day at that price, and that's few and far between, especially against a pretty decent Twins lineup. 74 looks a lot more playable to me on the DK slate. Again, we'll get into this one. Mitchell Parker against Arizona, 64 I think is playable enough just as a bargain bin type dart, but I like the other guys in the sixes higher up. At 84 on FanDuel, I think you just leave it alone. Arizona pulling a pretty healthy total, one of the two 5+ teams on the entire slate. Carson Spears against the Cubbies, don't really see a need to go to that. 8,000, 7,500 is just kind of an also-ran on both sides as far as the value guys go. Jake Bloss at 66 on the FanDuel slate is very cheap. 66 on the DraftKings slate, also very cheap. Probably not even at value. I think we just defer to those other $6,000 pitchers or the $4,000 guy for a similar projection. Palante against Texas feels like a no, especially at 78 on DK compared to those other guys. Chris Flexen is always a no, and Jordan Montgomery bringing up the bottom of the barrel. When you project lower than Chris Flexen, it's not a good day for you. Shono playing 200% Skeens. I'd love to do that. The Skeens could absolutely double the next highest score. Yeah, and again, that's just, one way of looking at it, given what the crazy, crazy high popularity is. He is by far the most likely pitcher to go out there and run off and hide with his fantasy score. But any one of these guys is, not the equivalent of the rookie, which is crazy to say about three pretty good pitchers. But each of those guys has more than enough talent to succeed. Pivetta gets the benefit of the matchup. I don't mind the Valdes matchup against St. Louis. The one I'm most skeptical about is probably Gilbert against Boston in Fenway on a day where it's leaning a little bit toward bats, and he's also higher priced than these other two guys. But Gilbert is supremely talented on the mound, so I have no real issues with it, and that's a good way to get us into this first game. Gilbert's exactly what the Mariners try and do with pitching. There are several good examples of that on this pitching staff right now, and he's one of the key guys. I have no issues with him at price. I wish he didn't cost 10.9 on a day where it was Skeens at 11.5 and then him at 10.9. You could take a bigger discount. 25% strikeout rate for him, a 2.72 ERA against a 3.39 xFIP. So half a run plus between the ERA and the xFIP. But even if the ERA was that xFIP number, it would still be a sparkling ERA. So excellent at limiting runs, and he does a lot of that via limiting opportunities. In addition to being good at punching out hitters or getting ahead in counts and inducing weak contact, he's also been excellent at just keeping guys off base. 4.9% walk rate, a .86 whip over 139 innings and 21 starts. Logan Gilbert's terrific. So again, I could easily see him coming out here and shutting down this Red Sox team. He also isn't allowing a lot of power. It's a manageable launch angle at 12.9 degrees, just a 2.85% home run rate. It's a little bit of exit velo at 89.1, but the barrels are manageable. The hard hit number is perfectly manageable. Stuff Plus loves him. 14.1% swinging strike rate is elite. A lot of reason to believe that at single-digit ownership, Logan Gilbert could sneak through and be a top pitcher even against this Red Sox team. This confirmed version of the Red Sox lineup will point out 23.9% strikeouts on the season. Loaded up with lefties up top, definitely a high danger spot again, but that's what we're kind of getting. That's why we're getting him at low ownership, because it's a high danger spot and because there's top options on the board. But Gilbert, for me, very playable here. And then Pivetta on the other side. Again, going to be popular, probably the second most popular pitcher on both sites. 85.94 across sites is very manageable price-wise. Facing one of the weakest lineups in baseball, even with the improvements that they've made. 26.1% strikeout rate for this confirmed version of the Seattle lineup. They added Rosarena, who's a terrific player. He's got 15 home runs, 16 steals, even in a down season. He's created runs 10% better than average, but even he strikes out nearly 25% of the time. So it's not like they're avoiding strikeouts by adding that. They're just got more talented by adding him. So Pivetta with a 29.5% strikeout rate, a 4.50 ERA, but a much better 3.34 xFIP underneath it, 11.7% swinging strikes. He's given up some power. Definitely a little bit of danger going up against, say, Kyle Raleigh at a 12.8 in the home run model with his 22 long balls on the season. Randy Rosarena at 8.17. A couple other guys at respectable, above halfway to the magic number type power marks. But there's also a lot of reason to believe that Pivetta could breeze through this lineup 3 times, pick up 8 to 10 strikeouts along the way, and have a day, especially for the 8,500 on DraftKings. You can use that as a high-price SP too. 9,400 you can absolutely fire away on FanDuel. Just know that he's going to be the first alternative if people go away from Paul Skeens, and you do have Logan Gilbert and other interesting options on the board. Starting with that Mariners lineup, if we're looking at stacks, and I think we should, again, this is a true four-corner spot to me. We're dealing with mid-fours totals on both sides, but we're dealing with 2 very talented pitchers in this one. Extreme hitters conditions. Victor Robles at the top of the Mariners lineup now, 3,100, 2,700, has been great since joining this team 109 plate appearances ago. Really delivering on what he was supposed to be all along. One of the top prospects, top 5 prospect in baseball back in 2019. Had one good year and then a bunch of just, up and down moments over the past couple of seasons for Washington. Still young, 27 years old. Has found a home here, hopefully. 143 WRC plus over his first 109 opportunities. 12 stolen bases. He stole like 8 bases in the last 10 games or something along those lines. Slashing 308, 396, 440. All he needs to do is continue getting on base, but he's barreling the ball pretty effectively. 12.2% barrel rate. He makes good contact and always has. Rosarena for just 4,800, 3,200 is a primo player. Again, 15 homers and 16 steals. 322 on base is respectable enough. He's created runs 10% better than average, and now a new home at the top of this lineup. Very, very interesting hitter with power, speed, fills a lot of fantasy categories. And again, Pivetta has been vulnerable to premium contact. A 4.34% home run rate on 9.9% barrels, a 19.5 degree average launch. It's probably going to give up a homer to these guys today. It's just a matter of how many guys are on base when that happens and what else happens. Raleigh for 45-29, an effective switch hitter bat, getting an opportunity on the left side here. 22 home runs on the season, 218 ISO, a 109 WRC plus. Easy to click on, hitting third every day or thereabouts every day with all that power upside. 17% barrels, 52.6% hard hits on the season. Tremendous year. He's not an average hitter. He's not an on-base guy, but he is a power machine. Jorge Polanco at second base, 34.26, has been entirely forgettable for most of the season. He does have a solid 9.2% barrel rate, but even that is down over his last few seasons, striking out at a 30.7% clip, drawing a 9.4% walk rate, getting on just at a 292 clip, 85 WRC plus. Pretty tough to play. Hitting cleanup kind of feels miscast. I would have considered maybe like moving Luke Raley up a spot, or give that to Vossler, or give Tyler Locklear a start and put him there. It's been kind of concerning for Polanco this season. He's playable, but only in a mix-and-match cheap guy sense in the middle of the lineup. Luke Raley for 41.27 has 11 homers and 7 steals in 293 chances. 1 point below average for by WRC+. Hitting the ball fairly squarely, but another high strikeout option. Could give you a couple zeros, but could definitely get involved and maybe correlate with his friends. Maybe drive a few of them in. Dylan Moore for 38.28. 4 positions on FanDuel. Shortstop and outfield on DraftKings. Probably prefer him in the outfield there. 9 homers, 19 steals, most of which came in like 2 weeks back when everybody thought he was going to be good. 195 ISO, 105 WRC plus, over 302 plate appearances, slashing 206, 309, 401. Like most of this team, can give you some counting stats from time to time between the power and the steals, but really unreliable, very prone to giving you zeros. But he is a flexible piece if you're stacking this squad. Jason Vossler for 28 on DraftKings at first base, and the dead min on FanDuel first and third base. 222, 263, 389. Not the best 19 plate appearances so far, but does have pop in that bat. Rates out at a 6.44 in the home run model. I think he's playable, but not a great option. Mitch Haniger for 29.25, 9 home runs and not much else this season, and 84 WRC plus. Does still make good contact when he happens to connect, striking out at a 28.3% clip. But you're just chasing cheap upside contact from the right-handed outfielder there, and there are probably better spots to go to. Josh Rojas, 3,400 at third base, not ideal on DraftKings. 2,500 mix and match through second base, maybe on FanDuel. 5 home runs, 6 steals, over 330 opportunities. A 97 WRC plus, kind of a weak option late. This team, as we said, just picked up Justin Turner, so presumably he'll be slotting in there. They traded Ty France after DFAing him. So they're reshaping this inept offense, but for today, I think probably lean a little bit Pivetta, but I can see the Mariners potentially succeeding against. And then this high-end Red Sox lineup is the more appealing side if we're considering bats in this one. But again, very tough matchup against Gilbert. He is difficult to score runs against, or at least to pile up runs against over the course of the entire season. And it's going to be somewhat obvious in that sparkling ERA. He's given up a max of... he had that bad one, that's right. Back on May 9th against the Twins. I'm like poking the screen as though you guys can see it with my finger. Only went 4 innings, gave up 8 earned runs, 4 strikeouts in that one. That was his one meltdown on the season. Outside of that, he gave up 4 runs exactly 3 different times, including the second start of the year back on April 5th. And every other start is 3 runs or fewer, and there's only a couple of 3s mixed in here. He's very, very good, and the overall point there is even if he gives up a few runs, a bad day for Logan Gilbert is typically I gave up 3 or 4 runs. That doesn't really equal a great stacking opportunity on the other side, outside of just, hey, these guys are a collection of really good lefty bats, at least at the top of the lineup. 59.37 for Jarren Duran. He's at 13 home runs. He's stolen 22 bases. He has a 214 ISO. His creator runs 32% better than average. He's just doing literally everything well. Every single category in baseball, he's just stuffing this season. 59 is very expensive on DraftKings, but he's earned it, honestly. Not the ideal spot probably to spend 59 on him and then 61 on Devers, 55 on O'Neill on a day where they're facing one of the better pitchers in the game. So I don't love the Red Sox, and I don't love how they're priced on both sites, but you're not really skipping Duran if you're going to Red Sox. You do get a price break on the 2 next lefties. Willie Abreu for a very cheap price considering his 11.8% barrels and 49.1% hard hits on the season. 9 home runs, 7 steals, fills out DFS lines appropriately over 270 plate appearances, a 220 ISO, 122 WRC plus. Willie Abreu, especially when he moves up to second in the lineup like this, is a really appealing piece when you're stacking Red Sox because of how cheap he is. Yoshida, another lefty outfielder, he's cheaper on DraftKings at $3,700 than even Abreu is, $2,600. Similarly priced, $100 cheaper on the FanDuel slate. He's slashing 270, 348, 372. He's an ideal correlated scoring piece ahead of Devers and O'Neill. If you just want to 3-man that, I have no issues with him or any of the other, either of the other 2 above him. But getting him at such a cheap price is really interesting when he's getting on base this much over 221 plate appearances. Remember, he was hurt for a while. Creating runs 3% better than average. That could definitely go up. And when I'm dealing with some faith based on last year at 289, 338, 445, creating runs 9% better than average with 15 home runs over 580 chances. It's a good lefty bat. Not a extreme power hitter, but he doesn't strike out, puts the ball in play quite a bit, and hits it relatively hard while getting on base to set the table for the two sluggers. Devers for 61-39 has 23 home runs at 290 ISO, 157 WRC plus, and makes tremendous contact. Tyler O'Neill barrels the ball more, but finds fewer hard hits. But both of these guys are elite in the contact department. O'Neill for 55-35, still reasonably priced for a guy with 22 home runs, a 285 ISO, and a 145 WRC plus over 325 chances. If he had the full extra 75 plate appearances from the games that he missed after Devers knocked him unconscious, we'd be pushing at least over 25 home runs, if not into the high 20s right now. So, I mean, this is a very, very good hitter who's probably a little bit, couple hundred cheaper than he should be. It's a high price, no doubt, but a couple hundred cheaper than he should be. Dom Smith, he's all right. 5 home runs, a 138 ISO, and 91 WRC plus. It's just another lefty bat in there. He's not a high strikeout guy. He can draw walks. He can barrel the ball from time to time. Every time I say he's not good, it seems like he's gone out and hit one of these 5 home runs. So I don't want to say he's not good. I'm just going to leave it at all right. Not my favorite bat in this lineup, though. I think I prefer every single one of the other guys a little bit more. Connor Wong, 3,800, remains very, very cheap. Slashing 297, 362, 446. He's up to 10 home runs, 149 ISO, 124 WRC plus. He's just been involved for them. The average has come down a little bit, but still very high-end catcher for a very cheap price on DraftKings. David Hamilton, mix and match second baseman with 5 home runs and 26 stolen bases with just a 314 on base percentage. Also fits in at shortstop, but just greatly prefer him at second base on either site. 48-28, more manageable price tag on the FanDuel slate. With all of the quality in terms of the speed, the on base is a little bit limited, and the WRC plus falls in at 95. But he's definitely a playable part. And then Ceddanne Rafaela has scored a ton of runs, driven in a bunch. He's hit 12 home runs, stolen 15 bases, 85 WRC plus. How that adds up, I was beyond me. But he seems like he's been a more effective DFS option, maybe, than what we're getting credit for statistically here. 4 positions on FanDuel for 29, shortstop and outfield for 42 on DraftKings. Highly, highly playable. And now we've got to rank it. I'm going to go pitching up top. I'm going to say Pivetta, then Gilbert, and then I'm going to say Red Sox, and then trailing way behind, but with a little bit of value on them, is the Mariners' bats. I think all 4 sides are playable. Twins and the Mets. It's been like overcast and humid here all day, but looks fine right now. Maybe some wind and rain blowing through a little bit later on, but seems like anything here will be brief, as we discussed. Again, I think either of these pitchers could succeed here. For DFS purposes, I'm really only interested in Woods Richardson, and it's really only on the DraftKings slate because he costs $6,700 over there. He's had an effective season over 17 starts. He doesn't pitch tremendously deep into games. 88 innings in 17 starts is not great, but a 3.27 ERA is effective. A 4.21 xFIP is a run higher, but it's still an effective enough xFIP from a guy who's a $6,700 pitcher. He's not inept for strikeouts, 21.1% strikeout rate. Not a best strike thrower in the league, but he's found around a league average strikeout rate, around slightly above 1 in 5. He's going up against a Mets team that gives you right about that same level, so expectations of around his usual strikeout output are fair. He hasn't gotten murdered for power, 88.7 miles an hour of exit velo and 36.7% hard hits. He's a fly ball pitcher, and he's given up a fair chunk of barrels there, but it hasn't burnt him. 2.22% home run rate. I don't know how much of it remains real. That could change. This especially could change in a hurry. 87.35 by stuff. Plus, obviously, we're not dealing with the best arsenal in baseball, but he's made it work. He's been effective enough. And as good as this Mets lineup is, and has been over the last couple of months, there is a little bit of a run of 1 in 4 type strikeout guys there through the heart of the lineup. So maybe a little bit of additional upside for strikeouts. Last time out, he struck out 5 Phillies. This is a perfect example. If you got this game today, you'd be pretty ecstatic. 6 innings, 3 hits, 5 Ks, 1 walk, no hit, no runs. That's ideal. That was against the Phillies. We think he can't come out and do that against the Mets? Start before that, 4 1/3, gave up 2 runs on 7 hits. Struck out 7, though. Only 4 1/3. That was against the Giants at San Francisco. 4 Ks in 3. That's right. He had this weird run of 3 starts with exactly 4 strikeouts and 2 walks, but didn't give up more than 3 earned runs in any one of the 3. He gave up 5 earned runs all the way back on May 11th, and that was his worst start of the year in terms of earned runs allowed. He's completed the 6th a handful of times, including 2 out of the last 3. Quality starts in both of those. I don't think it gets you to him at 91 on FanDuel. He should just be less expensive on that slate. That's a little bit silly to have him up there. Right? Especially with like not a total lock to get to 6 innings. Feels like he should probably be more in this range, and then Quintana should probably be more in like this range. That's a little bit high, but absolutely adore the spot at 6,700 on DraftKings. I think that's a good tournament play, considering how low owned he'll be. No guarantees of success, obviously. But as far as a tournament pivot away from some more popular SP2 plays, it's not bad. Quintana just an 18.6% strikeout rate, a 4.02 ERA, and a 4.40 xFIP. Again, he is capable of being effective, and he's facing a Twins lineup. We've got Buxton, we've got Royce Lewis back. We've still short one Carlos Correa, but it's a pretty good version of the Twins lineup. So it's probably just a spot where you're not getting a big enough discount really on either site, for me anyway, to play him and just chase like a okay game. His ceiling is like a lot of other guys, just, average-ish kind of a game. Did strike out 8 2 starts ago against Colorado in Queens, but gave up 5 earned runs on an odd 4 home runs. The game against the Yanks after that was respectable, 6 strikeouts, but again, 5 walks in that one, limited the efficiency. Doesn't pitch particularly deep into most games, but did have 2 7-inning starts back-to-back against the Nationals in a home-and-home. No earned runs across the 14 innings, allowed 5 hits combined, 4 walks combined, 6 strikeouts combined, again, across 14 innings. Mets won one of those games. But he picked up the quality start in both of them. So, I mean, that's the kind of upside you can get. You can push your way to 7 or 8 strikeouts on the best of days, but it's kind of limited, and this opponent has a 19.4% strikeout rate for this confirmed lineup. Part of that is Brooks Lee at 15.5 over 84 plate appearances at the bottom, but it's a reasonably believable number for them to be just low strikeouts. So Quintana playable, but not a priority by any stretch of the imagination. Top of the Twins lineup, Manny Margot typically lands in that spot against lefties. Not much of a hitter, and really never has been. He comes through every now and again. He's kind of, clutch doesn't exist, but he's kind of clutch at the plate sometimes with key hits. But that kind of like a guy like Harrison Bader, where just like the clutchness of some of his deliveries has overshadowed the fact that he's decidedly mediocre as a bat. 243, 302, 341 with an 85 WRC plus on the season. He's low strikeout, low walk, so a decent amount of opportunities for balls in play. Byron Buxton, on the other hand, superstar talent when he's healthy and going right. 12 home runs up to a 232 ISO, a 133 WRC plus. He strikes out a lot, but he doesn't really walk. 11.8% barrel, 47.7% hard hits on the season. Welcome back, Byron Buxton. Also welcome back Royce Lewis, 52-35. In and out of the lineup like crazy, but when he's here, he is elite talent-wise. 11 home runs in just 109 plate appearances, a 398 ISO on the season, a 186 WRC plus. Obviously, it's a very, very small sample, but whenever he's been in the lineup and healthy, he has just been very good. Not overly high priced either. I mean, for the upside that you're buying there against Jose Quintana, that's not a bad spot at 52.35. It's not cheap, but relative to the talent, it's probably a little bit of a discount. 42.29 for Carlos Santana, who's got 14 home runs, a 184 ISO, a respectable 115 WRC plus. Santana's pulled himself together. He's been good by and large this season. 16.8% strikeouts, 10% walks. Has been a pretty critical piece and an everyday player for this team. Willie Castro slides down the lineup a little bit. 4,700, 2,800 multi-position option on both sites. Has been a lot more limited of late, but still a very good run scorer and correlated scoring option with a 353 on base. He's crossed the plate 60 times. He's got a 121 WRC plus. A little bit more limited than in other seasons with stolen base output this year. He's hit 7 home runs, limited for power, limited for contact upside, but a very playable piece for a fair price on FanDuel at 28 with 4 positions. 47 is a little bit probably too high priced still on DraftKings. You should probably knock down to like 45 or lower. Second base and shortstop, you can move him around the board. Austin Martin, 2,900, 2,300 across sites. A pretty mediocre 142 plate appearances out of him, but he's supposed to be able to hit the ball a little bit. At least he's been sub 20% strikeouts. Drawing his walks, there's an opportunity to get involved at a cheap price, and he fits second base, so that's a playable part. Ryan Jeffers, a mix and match level catcher with 14 home runs, but not a lot of statistical quality across the slash line. It's actually not even that bad. 233, 14, 443. It's perfectly fine. 213 ISO, 114 WRC plus. He's fine. Max Kepler, a disappointing year out of Max. 261, 315, 395. His career runs 2% better than average, but only 6 home runs across 303 plate appearances. Not really Max Kepler type output, but definitely in any given slate kind of a threat. Brooks Lee at the bottom of the lineup, again, 15.5% strikeouts over 84 plate appearances, slashing 250, 298, 342, 82 WRC plus is not ideal. 2 homers and a stolen base. It's a trade we knew about already, just popped up. So the Twins, the priorities are here and here, and then probably for me, it's just straight line through those two, and then pick poison around the edges. You could go Margot if you wanted the cheap, probably lower-owned leadoff man. Austin Martin for a little talent. Jeffers to grab the affordable catcher on the DraftKings slate. I have no issues going down all the way down to Kepler for a cheap price. But this is your core of key hitters in descending order of priority right there. On the Mets side, a lot of interesting hitters to work with. They picked up Jesse Winker over the weekend, who was having a really strong season for their division rival Nationals. Now fills into this Mets lineup in a town that kind of hated him. Famously, couple situations over the years with Mets fans for Winker. But 4,000, 2,800 in the heart of the Mets lineup now with all that on base quality in front of them. I like the upside for Jesse Winker going forward through the second half to, at worst, continue what he's been doing. And I think there's a decent level of additional upside to come. Starting at the top of the lineup, though, the superstar, all-star in my mind, maybe not the public's, 22 home runs and 21 stolen bases for the shortstop already. 5,700, 4,100 is totally appropriate for Francisco Lindor. He is absolutely fantastic. 219 ISO, creating runs 31% better than average. Brendan Nimmo, 5,000, 3,500, 16 home runs, 9 stolen bases, a 187 ISO, 125 WRC plus. Has been more limited as a hitter, but has hit for a little bit more power this year. Last year was at 274, 363, 466, a 193 ISO, 130 WRC plus, hit 24 long balls and 682 chances. So actually, maybe we're still just right about that pace. 8 more home runs in 240 more plate appearances. Actually, he might actually be behind the power curve, and the ISO would indicate that. I thought we were a little ahead of the curve. So he's slightly diminished this year, but still a very strong option, barreling the ball a little bit more, hitting it a little bit harder, but striking out more, drawing more walks. Interesting hitter, 5,000, 3,500. JD Martinez, with all his power, 6.20 in the home run model, 11 home runs, a 183 ISO, 126 WRC plus. Maybe not the completely fearsome right-handed power bat of old, but still makes elite-level contact and has more than enough pop to drive the ball out against Simeon Woods Richardson. Pete Alonso, 11.5% barrels and 41% hard hits for 5,200. Joins a quartet of high-priced Mets up at the top, but if you're putting them together with guys down here, you can save a lot of money pretty quickly and average that down. Same thing on FanDuel, but you only need 4 on FanDuel, and you get JD for just 3,000 over there, so pretty affordable price-wise. Winker, again, 4,000, 2,800 is an absolute bargain. If you just attach him to the top 5, that helps you average down to under 5,000 apiece for the top 5 against Simeon Woods Richardson here. All 4 of the top 4 guys have double-digit barrel rates, 40+% hard hit rates. Winker hasn't made the best contact, but there's nothing wrong. This is just average-ish kind of contact. Maybe the barrel's a little above, and is seeing good results from it. Mark Vientos sliding down a spot, 16.9% barrels, 44.8% hard hits, 14 home runs, a 257 ISO, a 149 WRC plus over 235 chances. Has just been utterly fantastic for this squad in terms of everything they could want from power hitting third baseman. 4,600 on DraftKings, still way too cheap. 3,100 on FanDuel, still too cheap. Jeff McNeil, I'm still not buying in on any of this. 9 home runs on the season, over 360 plate appearances, has really pulled himself together. What it should ultimately translate to, you would think, is pull himself together and starts collecting more base hits based on being the BABIP-focused player that he's always been, and just, things normalize and he starts finding those holes again. The power surge I don't think is necessarily real, but maybe. Again, I haven't really looked into the swing plane changes just because I'm not a buyer yet. Luis Torrens, Harrison Bader at the bottom of the lineup. Bader can mix and match his way through some lineups. 8 home runs, 14 stolen bases, dead at league average for run creation over 302 chances. Torrens, a reasonable catcher for a very cheap price. 3 home runs, over 67 opportunities. A decent slash line, but more of a career backup catcher. This goes Mets bats, Twins bats. Woods Richardson on DraftKings. And that's about it. All right, Cubs against Carson Spears, 7,500, 8,000 for Spears. Over 47 innings in 5 starts. He's got a 20.5% strikeout rate, a 3.83 ERA, a 4.19 xFIP. Pretty good strikeout to walk ratio there in that limited sample of innings. He's been effective. Had a 9 strikeout game, but gave up 3 earned to Miami over 5 innings on 6 hits in his most recent outing. 4 earned runs in 4 2/3 to the Tigers, but before that he had a stretch of 6 inning starts, his first 3. Went exactly 6, struck out 5 in the first 2 and 4 in the third one. Gave up 4 earned runs, then 3 earned runs, then 1 earned run to Pittsburgh, and St. Louis. So maybe a little tiny sliver of believability that we could approach the mid-20s on FanDuel, that we could approach maybe not 15, but 12 and a half, 13, 14 maybe. But it's pretty thin looking, and I don't think he's completely priced down. Bad ballpark. Team on the other side pulling a 4.80 implied total that matches his team's implied total, so there's no real direct angle toward the win bonus. Don't love Spears. Don't really think he's overly playable outside of a few just, darts in spare lineups. On the other side, Jameson Taillon, a little bit more proven of a pitcher. A 2.96 ERA, but betrayed completely by a 4.17 xFIP. This is still manageable, but it's not as sparkling as that is. 103rd in 17 starts. He's got a 19.1% strikeout rate, 5.1% walks. Another guy, good strikeout to walk ratio there, but typically you're getting 3 to 5 strikeouts. He spiked 10 strikeouts back at the end of June, then had 2 7-strikeout games in the interim through July, but overall kind of limited. You do have a very high strikeout opponent on the other side that could maybe push a little bit of upside. So if I'm playing Taillon, I'm really only looking at him on DraftKings at 81. And even there, just doesn't really fit the price setup for this slate. Got cheaper options. He probably goes through at low ownership, so maybe you pick off a high price SP2 good strikeout spot with a shaky option. But once you start compounding those things on top of that, maybe it gets a little bit weighty. So don't really like either pitcher here. I'm more focused on bats with 2 healthy run totals. Let me see if we got the lineups. We probably do. Got the Cubs. And let's see. We have the Reds. Yankees in extensive trade chalks for Jack Flaherty. That would be nice. Yankees in extensive. And come up. Nothing like taking the time out of a short show to send a text message to my group. Got to make sure I'm on top of the reporting, though. Looks like no Reds lineup yet. Yeah, still no Reds lineup, which is annoying. Cubby side, though, we'll start there. Nico off the top, 41-28. Typically, we're finding him up there, 326 on base, 15 steals. really needs to just kind of kick things into gear as far as the steals go. I think he picked up one since we last talked about this. But if he's going to be up there and getting on base to set the table, it would be nice to find some additional counting stats for DFS purposes out of the stolen bases. Right now, just a correlated scoring option and only pulling in a 93 WRC+. Not ideal. Michael Busch, I like a lot with the power upside, 11.4% barrels on the season, 12 home runs, a 185 ISO, 25% better than average for run creation, and fits in at a very, very fair 2,700 at second base on FanDuel, which makes me like Nico even less. If I can get Busch in that spot for 100 less and then not using Nico at shortstop mostly, I would just kind of make Busch the starting point there. Not that Nico's terrible, but Busch does a lot more interesting DFS things right now at the same position for 100 less. On DraftKings for 3,800 at first base, he's just very cheap, and there's nothing wrong with using him at first, especially in this lineup if you're stacking. What are you doing, buddy? It was weird. So there's nothing wrong with using him there, but maybe not totally ideal, but he is very cheap. Seiya Suzuki, a lot of premium contact, 11.9% barrels, 50.2% hard hits on the season, 15 homers, 10 steals, a 214 ISO. Drives the ball very effectively when he's not homering. He's hitting a lot of doubles and driving guys in. It's been a really effective back rating, runs 31% better than average for this team. You also get Ian Happ, 20% better than average with 16 home runs on the board, leading this lineup, 11.7% barrels and 43.7% hard hits from a guy who is a proven mid-20s type power bat in the right season. I have no issues going to Happ at a very cheap 42-32 against Carson Spears in this ballpark. I like that quite a bit. Mike Tauchman, an on-base machine with a 344 on base, 104 WRC+. That's really what he focuses on. It's correlated scoring and not a ton else. Every now and then you get a little lefty pop. He's fairly low strikeout, high walk, which feeds the on-base upside. Dansby for 35-26, 9 home runs, 7 steals on the season, a 125 ISO, and a 79 WRC+. Worst season that I can remember from Dansby Swanson. You still can maybe buy in on the previous track record with a player that we know pretty well, and the fact that he's still got an 8.3% barrel, 44% hard hit, but it's been pretty difficult to trust this year. Patty Wisdom, just a 4.44 in the home run model against Carson Spears in this ballpark doesn't feel necessarily right. Spears must not have given up many home runs in his limited outings. That's one of those spots where outside of going in and just inflating it artificially, there's nothing I can do about that just because he hasn't given up home runs, but it seems like a spot where maybe would be a little bit more vulnerable for a key home run bat like Patty Wisdom. I was expecting him to be a little bit higher. 6 homers on the season, a 240 ISO over 113 plate appearances. Still one of the better options for a home run from this lineup, but it does look like Spears is having a little bit of a limiting impact there. Pete Crow Armstrong, Miguel Amaya, just mix and match options to end the lineup. Crow Armstrong has a little speed, but doesn't get on base and is a sub-Mendoza hitter. Jonathan India on the red side of the top, 4,400, 3,100 cross sites at second base, 8 home runs, 9 steals. Another guy who's just an absolute on-base machine, 366 on base, a 115 WRC+. Has been very effective and has been high quality for correlated scoring since moving back into that leadoff spot. Ellie for 6,200, 4,200, 55 stolen bases. He's like 20 ahead or 30 ahead of the next closest guy. 18 home runs, a 227 ISO, a 131 WRC+. And just the second year in the league. There's just, the things that are to come from this player as he continues to grow are just going to be absolutely amazing. One of my favorite players in baseball to watch. I expect he's one of most of your favorite players to watch too. 15 home runs, 16 steals on the season for Spencer Steer for just 4,800, 3,700. Another player, I love the opportunity to get him at second base on the FanDuel slate. Either way, you can just drop him into the outfield across sites, and even at first base, he's not miscast. 192 ISO, 108 WRC plus on the season. TJ Friedel, 4,000, 3,200. Pretty ineffective, 121 plate appearances. Does have 4 home runs and 6 stolen bases in the small sample. Hasn't been great for reliability, correlated scoring, or premium contact, but doesn't really strike out, can steal some bases, can turn on the ball a little bit. So not a bad fit if he's sitting in the middle of the lineup. Not a bad fit if he slides up ahead of some of those other run creators. Jeimer Candelario with his power, 4,400, 3,100 is good buy. 16 home runs, a 206 ISO against a gettable pitcher in this ballpark. I like the upside 9.12 in the home run model. You can see some decent power numbers shining through for the Reds. Tyler Stevenson for just 3,600 has a 9.6% barrel rate and 45.2% hard hits, 11 home runs and 307 chances, a 187 ISO. Creates runs right at league average. He's not a great hitter overall, but he's a very good power bat at the catcher spot that people tend not to go to all that much. He's never all that popular. 3,600 is a great buy on DraftKings, and 2,800 is very, very playable at first base on FanDuel. Jake Fraley, 13 steals on the season, a 328 on base, a decent correlated scoring piece, but not much more than that late in the lineup in the outfield. Novan Marte, pretty bad 95 plate appearances out of the 2 home runs and the 3 steals. It's been pretty weak since coming back from that suspension. Will Benson, 11 homers, 13 steals, just doing Will Benson things, which is almost exclusively providing odd counting stats at the bottom of the lineup. Doesn't create runs all that effectively, doesn't get on base or hit for average at all, but makes killer contact and provides counting stats. 193 ISO on the season is pretty good. Reds bats above. Nah. Yeah, let's go that way. Show them more power. Reds bats, Cubs bats. Neither pitcher for me. Rangers lineup is in. Josh Smith in the leadoff spot. Marcus Semien sliding to third. Okay. Andre Palante, 3.92 ERA with a 3.90 xFIP over 57 and a third in 9 starts. 6 innings in his most recent one, 3 strikeouts, 2 walks, just an earned run, 3 hits. It's not a bad start for the money. 6 and a third the start before that. Gave up 4 earned, struck out 5. Mediocre. Just 1 earned on 4 hits over 7 innings against Pittsburgh. 5 strikeouts in that one. That game and the first game I mentioned were both against Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh on either side of July. Those were his best starts of the year. 7,800, 6,800. There's maybe a little bit of ceiling beyond the median projections here, but it doesn't seem like much. Jazz Chisholm starting at third base for the first time in his career for the Yankees tonight. Interesting. I just don't think he's cheap enough at 78 on DraftKings. I'd just rather get down into the sixes if I'm doing that, rather than go to this guy. Or like just go to Alec Marsh all the way up there, even though it will be popular. I just don't see it really for Palante. 18.3%. Strikeouts, just a 7.7%. Swinging, 23.3% CSW. He's got a 1.33 whip with an 8.7% walk rate, so he's given up a lot of opportunities. The one thing he is doing well is limiting home runs, premium contact, and power with a 1.3 degree average launch. So maybe it's not the best day to be stacking up Rangers on the other side. They're pulling in a 4.32. Middle of the board in terms of the run total, but you can see a little bit of limiting impact through some usually pretty robust home run marks. I think that's the effect that Andre Palante has on this slate. It maybe keeps the Rangers offense in check. On the other side, Nathan Eovaldi is definitely more interesting. Projects out pretty strongly. 9,300 is a good price on DraftKings. 10-4, worth paying for probably on FanDuel. 3.31 ERA and a 3.27 xFIP on the season. 24.6% strikeouts against 6.1% walks. Has been okay at managing power, mostly via a manageable 7.6 degree average launch. Gives up a decent amount of hard hits and exit velo, but he makes it all work for him. He's got a low whip at 1.04 with that low walk rate. Was up and down for strikeouts. Last 2 years was at 22.4 and 22.9%. So we're seeing a little bit of uptick from him. A very solid 13.2% swinging strike rate and a 29.5% CSW against a Cards team that has some strikeouts, but not a crazy abundance of strikeouts in the lineup. I like the spot for Eovaldi. I just don't love it. So it's one of those ones where, again, if you're pivoting away from Skeens, he's easily on the board. Pivetta will be higher owned. These two guys will be lower owned. So he's in that mix for sure, but it's probably for me going to be a day where if I'm not paying that price, and forgive me for just talking on the FanDuel side of it, I probably dip and take a cheaper guy. I'm not sure who at this point. I mean, maybe it just becomes Pivetta for 94, or maybe it's, I guess, Marsh at 82. I don't think I talked myself into investing 91 in Woods Richardson. This price is absurd. So I don't know. It's a really tight group. up at the top of the mountain there. But Evaldi is in that mix and worthy of shares in a gettable matchup. The Cards up and down, decidedly middle of the road kind of a team. Starting with the Rangers side, Josh Smith is interesting in the leadoff spot. He's gotten on base at a 379 clip. We've seen a lot of the numbers starting to diminish a little bit around the edges. But a 136 WRC plus. He's drawing a 9.3% walk rate against the 20.2% strikeout rate. He actually drew a little bit more in terms of walks last year, which is part of why I believe that maybe out of everything he maintains some of the on-base quality. Maybe he maintains some of the correlated scoring quality. We'll see what happens with the average with the power output. But playable piece for 45, 3,000 now that he's in the leadoff spot. Corey Seager for 53.35 is a slightly diminished and definitely low-priced superstar. 14.9% barrels and 50.4% hard hits are barely diminished. 19 home runs and 400 plate appearances, a 199 ISO, 130 WRC plus. It's perfectly fine. Slightly down from previous output. Semien is further down. He's hit 15 home runs, but just a 158 ISO, 102 WRC plus. He has scored 70 runs from the leadoff spot in most games. Now hitting third. Probably be looking for a little bit more power upside out of him. Never really barrels the ball or hits for a ton of hard hit rate, but he's low strikeout at 13.2% on this season, 14.6% with a 9+ walk rate both of the last 2 years. Definitely a high-end second baseman still, and you're getting him at a nice price across sites. Wyatt Langford for 42.28, believable piece at 5 home runs and 9 steals in 339 opportunities. He's been somewhat effective, but limited in terms of expectation against him as a rookie. But not striking out a ton, drawing a fair walk rate, 41.7% hard hits. For the price, I have no problems believing that he's playable. If he was more highly priced, it would be more problematic. 46.34 for Adolis Garcia, definitely a discount there. He's been scuffling. No doubt about it. 214, 279, 398, just an 86 WRC plus. You're buying counting stat upside. 12.4% barrels and 47.8% hard hits has led to 18 home runs. He's got 9 stolen bases. And we know that he's a better player overall than what he's been. Nathaniel Lowe for 36.29. He's a player we've talked about a good deal. 363 on base, 116 WRC plus. We had a conversation in Discord the other day where I said I would love to have him, and if I had him on the Yankees, I would play him in the leadoff spot ahead of Judge and Soto because of that on base and the elite on base percentage he's gotten on for his entire career. He's only led off, I think it was 9 times across 2 games in his career, but would be an interesting spot for him. Hitting 6th in this lineup, I think he's a playable part. Does have more power than he's shown. He's got 8 home runs, just a 122 ISO over 342 chances, but is a good hitter. Ezekiel Duran, mix and match part, more particularly on FanDuel. 28 at third base on DraftKings is not ideal. 22 with 4 position eligibility on FanDuel makes it more interesting. That said, one of those 4 positions is not second base, which is where I would ideally like to stash him. And I do have second base filled with Marcus Semien, so maybe not even. But he's a mix and match type guy. 2 home runs, a stolen base, 256, 294, 324 across 187 chances. Jonah Heim, 9 home runs. He was stuck at 8 for a while. I think he hit his 9th. We'll see if he gets his 10th anytime soon. A little bit of pop from the catcher, Leody Taveras at the bottom of the lineup. A little bit of counting stat upside. 7 homers, 12 steals in 363 chances. Not as good as he was last year. 77 WRC plus. The bottom of the lineup, and honestly, 2 guys in the middle of the lineup, really underperforming in terms of run creation for the defending champs. A little bit tough to trust, but there is a lot of man-for-man upside there. Against the Cards with Mason Wynn up at the top, 4,100, 2,800. He's cooled off a little bit, just creating runs 8% better than average, but that's still better than average. 6 home runs, 9 steals, at 330 on base. More of a correlated scoring option, less of a DFS high upside individual, but capable of getting on and contributing a few times. Alec Burleson, for a guy with 18 home runs, 7 steals, a 192 ISO, a 122 WRC plus across 382 plate appearances, remains absurdly cheap at 4,200 on the DraftKings slate. I'm not really sure what more they want. 12.8% strikeouts, 4.2% walks, so he's always putting the ball in play, 40.8% hard hits this year. He's driven his barrels up by 1.2% year over year. He's slashing 285, 317, 476. Don't really know why he's not more expensive. You take advantage. He fits in at first base also on FanDuel for 29. Wilson Contreras for 51, 32, 13 home runs out of the catcher. Nothing wrong with that spot as the most expensive and not that expensive relative to talent and position bat on this Cardinals team. 13.4% barrels and a 47.9% hard hit rate out of the catcher. A 245 ISO leads the team. A 159 WRC plus also leads the team. He's tremendous. Brendan Donovan for 38.29, multi-position fit on both sites. 329 on base, a 130 ISO, 9 home runs. Probably not your ideal cleanup hitter, but I think what they're going for is just a table reset there. They're hoping 1 through 3 comes through, and then Donovan gets on ahead of Arenado, Nootbaar, Goldschmidt, and no Gorman. We get Matt Carpenter instead. Arenado, Nootbaar, and Goldschmidt is a trio of believable upside bats, I guess. 11 home runs on the season for Arenado, but it's been a rough one. 261, 316, 386, just a 125 ISO and a 101 WRC plus. But it has been better over the last month or so than he was the first 3 months of the season. Nootbaar, a lot of time missed, just 224 plate appearances, does have 7 home runs and 4 steals, and interesting lefty bat with some pretty good contact, 9.4% barrels and 50.3% hard hits in a small sample of batted ball events. Totally playable. And then Goldie, over 440 chances, at least has his 16 home runs, but just a 158 ISO, 230, 288, 388, a 92 WRC plus. He's making better contact than Arenado is, but the output hasn't been all that much better. Matt Carpenter, entirely skippable at the bottom of the lineup. He's just left-handed and cheap. Michael Ciani is also left-handed and cheap. More of a defender, a little bit of speed. Nathan Eovaldi, Rangers bats, Cardinals bats. Would not play Palante. Still no Reds lineup, but we've got the Braves and the Brewers in. We've got most of the lineups on this slate in now. Coming up on 5:09. I am keeping an eye on the time a little bit more today and just trying to plow through as best I can. Everybody I'm sure that's here knows that we typically dive into these things and go at length. Nacho needs a junior on his name. I think it's a 7:20 start tonight, right? 7:10. 7:10 start in that Twins-Mets game. We'll be out long before that, but keeping an eye on it. Let me see what you guys are chatting about. Yeah, Tiz, I just saw that as I'm sure you mentioned it before I spotted it, but yeah, that would be a dynamite acquisition for the Yanks. I actually just traded for Jack over the weekend in the Dynasty League. I picked up Jack Flaherty and Altuve and Vinny Pasquantino for Ryan Mountcastle and Gleyber Torres, who were both re-signable and extendable in the later rounds of the draft. Spencer Schwellenbach, who's a 1-year, $1 keeper against our $400 cap. And then both of Vladdy Guerrero's younger brothers in the minor leagues. So it was a big package, but I'm happy with what I came away with. I love the idea of pairing Altuve and Lindor, second base and shortstop. I've got basically a lock at every single position except for corner infield, where I've got like a rotation of like quality guys who I'll probably pick the worst one every single week. My team right now: Sal Perez at catcher, Bryce Harper at first, Altuve at second, Austin Riley at third, Lindor at short. The corner infield spot this week I went with Eugenio Suarez, but I've also got Willie Castro, Nolan Arenado, Brendan Donovan, and Vinny that can fill that spot in addition to other guys who are in this lineup. Ha-Seong Kim at middle infield. 5 outfield spots filled by Aaron Judge, Luis Robert, Tyler O'Neill, Brent Rooker, and Adolis Garcia. And then the util spot welcoming back Giancarlo Stanton. Pretty solid offense. My pitching staff is Skeen, Skubal, Flaherty, Crochet. Couple of relievers because we play saves plus holds, and then I'm giving Brandon Pfaadt a start this week. Got to make a run in these last 2 months. Cashed out every last thing, stripped it down, kind of like a bomber team in a World War II movie where they're ripping all the stuff and throwing the guns and everything out the window on their way home to make the plane light enough to make it back on low fuel. That was me selling off parts, trying to just get a perfect lineup to make a run toward the top of the standings. We'll see if it works. Anywho, all of that is to say, I'd love to add Jack Flaherty to the Yankees. Tizzleman says, that and Rummy, trust me, I've been right on the money line this past week with Sox bats at least and need one knock, and my batters always get pinch hit for. You pinch hit Ref Snyder for Peruse. That's an obvious stack risk. Yeah, I mean, any pinch hit risk, to me, that's usually overthinking a little bit. I get it with guys who are like, very specifically platoon guys. But I'm not that concerned. And then, like, the Mariners have Gabe Spire and Taylor Saucedo as their two lefties in the pen. Are we overly worried about either of those pitchers? I don't think so. Now we're just wasting time. EIER. Spire's 28.2% Ks, but 14.1% walks, a 5.71 ERA, a 4.40 xFIP. Maybe he finds a few punch-outs against those lefties, but obviously he's gettable. And who did I say the other guy is? Taylor Saucedo. Same thing. Fairly high strikeout, high walk. Results have been a little better. 2.03 ERA, a 3.17 xFIP. Decent strikeout option. So, I mean, maybe, but I don't think it's a spot where it's like, oh, man, they're definitely getting pinch hit for. And they're definitely gonna angle that way. But with all those lefties that they did stack up at the top of the lineup, I could see it. If if you end an inning with Ceddanne Rafaela in, say, the 6th, do they bring in a lefty to start the 7th there, and maybe you do lose Willie Abreu? Maybe. That's where it would obviously come in. Duran, Yoshida, Devers, I think, is a lot safer. But, again, I think that gets into dramatic overthinking territory a lot more often than not. All right, Grant Holmes, 23.6% strikeouts against a 5.6% walk rate over 23 and a third. He has not made a start, but we do have, there he is. Last 2 outings, 3 and a third against Cincinnati and 3 innings against St. Louis on the 24th and the 20th. In the game against Cincinnati, he gave up 2 earned on 3 hits over 3 and a third. He faced 14 hitters, but he struck out 5. Not completely uninteresting. 3 innings back at the beginning of July. Before those 2, he went an inning and a third against Arizona, but then had a 3 inning, faced 10 hitters, shut out, gave up 1 walk, but struck out nobody performance against Arizona. A pair of 4 strikeout performances, 1 over 2 2/3 with no runs allowed against San Francisco, and then 1 against Pittsburgh. Gave up 1 hit to 10 hitters in both of those, walked 1 across the 5 2/3, struck out 8 combined hitters across the 5 2/3. So, I mean, if we're adding things up and combining some numbers across multiple outings, then maybe we could get to a respectable enough score. I think that's a 4.5 inning projection. I gave him like 4 plus. Or was it 3.5? I forget. Figure it's around a 4 and change inning projection. I think since they're giving him the actual start, he's got that upside. I don't think it's really all that compelling on FanDuel because we're probably not getting 6 and we're probably not getting a quality start and so on and so forth. At 4,000 on DraftKings, though, knowing we're at least probably pretty safe for pitching into a 4th inning, if not a 5th, for a cheap hitter price, I think he's on the board. Doesn't really make me comfortable, but the strikeouts have been there in his limited sample. The walks have been limited, and most of these relief appearances, again, are multi-inning. Most of them 3 plus. So I think there's believable $4,000 upside, and you guys haven't heard me say that many times this year. You're obviously not getting an immense ceiling, but you don't need one at that price. So as an SP2 consideration on DraftKings, I think he is definitely on the board. And I tell you what, let's check his ownership because I doubt he's all that popular. You're obviously taking a chance. He puts a few guys on base, gives up a run in the first inning, and then it could become a very short start very quickly. Just load the ownership, you bastards. They must be updating the ownership on the back end over at RG right now because it's not popping in there. Ah, there we go. Perfect. Yeah, he's going to be owned in the single digits per their stuff. So even if they've got it wrong, low double digits, 10, 12%-ish for a $4,000 pitcher. It's playable-ish. 55 on FanDuel. Again, I just don't think you do it. Colin Ray against the Braves. 18.2% strikeouts on the season, a 3.60 ERA with a 4.38 xFIP. You can see Stuff Plus doesn't like his arsenal at all. He's given up a lot of hard hits over the line on both hard hits and exit velo. 8.8% barrels is an extended barrel rate. 13.9 degree average launch angle puts the ball in the air more often than not. He's managed just a 3.03% home run rate this year. Last year on similar numbers, 4.45%. We've targeted Colin Ray quite a bit for power upside. You can see 3 Braves above the magic number and 2 just below a 9 with Sean Murphy and Jared Kelenic there. Braves are showing a lot of power. It's just, what else do they give us? Do they give us any kind of consistency through that on-base percentage? That collective on-base percentage for the entire 9-man Braves lineup tonight is 276. That's pathetic. That's really bad. Granted, that's got a 160 from Nacho baked in there over 25 opportunities, so call it a 291 across the guys who have gotten many more regular plate appearances. That's still really bad. That's where the Braves' biggest problem has been just getting guys on base. You can see just the only 2 guys creating runs above average are Riley and Ozuna right now, 115 and 168 WRC plus respectively. 27.1% strikeout rate for the confirmed lineup. It wouldn't knock me out of my chair to see Colin Ray succeed, guys, especially at 6,900 on the DraftKings slate. I think you've got a second bargain pitcher from this game. It wouldn't surprise me at all if the Braves go out and hit 3 home runs against him and score 8 and chase him by the 3rd inning. They've got that talent. You can see it through the home run model, if nowhere else. They project out pretty well at the top of the lineup to get just quickly diminished down through the bottom. So I do think we're dealing with almost exclusively on DraftKings either pitcher. Neither one's safe by any stretch of the imagination. Don't think we need to pay $8,900 to find out with Colin Ray on FanDuel. 55 on for Grant Holmes is a no. Look at the Brewers' bats to start things off, going up against Grant Holmes. They could ruin that $4,000 play. This is a good Brewers team, even without Christian Yelich. There's a lot of quality here. Bryce Turang, get him on base, and he's probably running 31 steals. He's got a 328 on base. That could improve. A 99 WRC plus could definitely improve, and probably needs to do a little bit more now with no Yelich. But he's been an effective, cheap second base option for counting stats at the top of the lineup. William Contreras, 5,000, 3,200, has 11 home runs, a 149 ISO, a 123 WRC plus, killer slash line. Very, very good catcher. Jake Bauers for 39.25 has a little pop in that bat. 11% barrels and 44.1% hard hits. Turned it into 8 home runs, a 186 ISO, a 112 WRC plus over 231 chances. It's not bad output. He's just not regular in terms of average. His on base is okay at 333 though. He draws a pretty good walk rate at 11.7%. Just strikes out a lot. Doesn't really hit for average, but kind of a 3 true outcomes type hitter. Willy Adames, kind of along those lines, 23.2% strikeouts, but 11.2% walks. Keeps him on base at a 329 clip. He's got a 180 ISO, 16 home runs, 12 stolen bases. Been filling counting stats pretty reliably all season. Jackson Chourio up to 11 home runs and 12 steals in his 329 chances. A 154 ISO, dead at league average for run creation for the ridiculously talented rookie. 35-27. I feel like we're still on an upward trajectory for the last 2 months. Seems like a get him while he's cheap spot since he's climbed the lineup a little bit lately, and he's been on kind of a tear over the last month or so. Garrett Mitchell for 29.25 across sites, over 59 plate appearances. Been fairly effective, 125 WRC plus. Filling some counting stats in decently enough for us. Rhys Hoskins, they definitely need to get more out of. He's got 17 home runs and a 214 ISO. He's created run 7% better than average, but he'd look a lot better if he was hitting higher up in the lineup and providing a little bit more regularity. 12.6% barrels and 40.4% hard hits is great, and he's very, very cheap at first base down the lineup. 8.42 in the home run model leads the team. Sal Frelick, contact-oriented hitter, 14 stolen bases with a 338 on base. Isn't bad, but a 96 WRC plus. Very, very limited for power and premium contact, but he's priced that way. He's cheap. He can wrap around to the top of the lineup on any given slate. And then Joey Ortiz, been fairly effective with 7 home runs and 6 steals, but down to a 151 WRC plus. The average is crumbling, but the on-base is still pretty good with a 12.9% walk rate against just a 17.2% strikeout rate, keeping him afloat with a 113 WRC plus. I like him a a lot better as a $2,800 second baseman on FanDuel than a $3,700 third baseman on DraftKings. But he's there. He's cheap. Not a great spot in the lineup, but not a bad pitching matchup. Looking into the terrible Braves. What a swing, season over season. Riley, Ozuna, and Olsen are obviously your key hitters, all three above the magic number for home runs. 14 on the season for Riley, and he's pulled most of his slash line together. He's up to a 115 WRC plus, a 198 ISO. Beginning of the season, very bad for Austin Riley. Last month plus, very good for Austin Riley. 11.33 in the home run model on 15.3% barrels, 52% hard hits. Excellent option at third base, 5,000, 3,300 if you're stacking Braves, and one of the more compelling reasons to consider some Brave stacks. Jared Kelenic for just 4,029 in the leadoff spot. Doesn't get on base all that frequently. Not a great leadoff hitter. 289 on base on 91 WRC plus. Hitting for a little bit of power out of that spot. Has the ability to steal bases if he happens to get on. 4,200. DFS-wise, he's fine to click on at those cheap prices ahead of those three key bats. But real-life-wise and reliability-wise, it's not the best spot in the lineup for him. Ozuna's expensive but worth it at 58.41. He's got 30 home runs this year at 285 ISO, mashing the ball when he makes contact with it. Matt Olson still makes elite contact, 10.4% barrels and 47.8% hard hits. Those are both down for him, but 15 home runs. That's also down over 435 plate appearances, a 175 ISO, again, down over that amount of plate appearances. But this is still very high-end contact, and most of the struggles are priced in at this point. This is a more expensive player than where he's priced right now. So we're getting an okay deal on the upside on the ceiling, even if we haven't seen it in the results so far. It's kind of important with a player like this to not really get too hung up on what the results so far look like when we're not necessarily seeing a lot of problematic things. Just take advantage. Say that, all right, I'm buying cheap ceiling out of Matt Olson. Cheap ceiling for sure in Sean Murphy at just 31.26 across sites. 5 home runs in 135 chances, just a 150 ISO, still 10.2% barrels. That's down from last year, and the hard hits are way down in a small sample so far this year. But Sean Murphy overall is an elite level catcher when he's going right. So no issues making the investment today for 8.90 in the Eddie Rosario, 33.27, just cheap lefty with a little bit of pop. He's got 10 home runs in 295 chances, and he's creating runs half as well as the average player. Adam Duvall, 32.27, very much the same thing. 10 home runs, slightly better, 15 points better in terms of run creation, but similarly awful slash line. Both of those guys pretty high strikeout, low walk. Orlando Arcia has been pretty bad this year, 220, 258, 341 in a disappointing season, 8 home runs, but not much else. And then Nacho Ignacio Alvarez Jr. has not really done anything with his first 25 plate appearances, but the kid's supposed to be able to hit a little bit. He's a mix and match piece in the infield. Braves really run like 1 through 5 if you're going there, and then anybody down here is just mix and match bolt-on type quality of just, I've only got so much left to spend, let me just plug one of these guys in and hope for the best. Top end is kind of appealing with that 5-man power group. Tough. I guess I got to go Brewers on top, but only slightly, given where the run totals are at. I think that run total is also interestingly reflective of this kid's opportunity to succeed for that 4,000. Against a pitcher like this, like you would think in a lot of cases this would be mid-4s maybe, somewhere in that territory. Brewers bats, Braves bats. Grant Holmes for 4,000, Colin Ray for 6,900. All 4 sides are playable. And like if we're talking about what's interesting, the actual like quality and upside ranking might be, or the quality ranking might be a little bit different than the upside / interesting play rankings, which probably put Grant Holmes at 4,000 on top. It would probably be the exact reverse. It'd be Holmes, Ray, and then still Brewers over Braves. So just depends on what kind of a ranking you're after. Pirates and the Stros. Paul Skeens all day long, even against the Astros. No issues with it, even at price, even at popularity. The kid's just tremendous. He is this good. He is this good, and there is no doubt about it. If he stays healthy, knock on wood, or even relatively healthy, in 22 years, hopefully we're all still here, we'll be talking about his first ballot Hall of Fame candidacy. He is that good. I have no issue saying it, and I don't think anybody would think I'm even crazy saying it based on what we've seen. Over his first 74 and 2/3 innings in the show, he's made 12 starts. He has a 1.93 ERA and a 2.26 xFIP, a 34.2% strikeout rate with a 4.6% walk rate, 0.87 whip, 12.9% swinging, 29.3% CSW. It's been utterly elite in every facet of pitching. And he's just great to watch. He not only has just absurdly good stuff and absurdly good results, he's a thinker of a pitcher. He's not just one of these guys up there just trying to chuck the ball 106 miles an hour. He's a student of the game and a really, really strong, Greg Maddux professor type pitcher up there, but like the 4.0 version that now has power as well. And then on the other side, there's Jake Bloss, who is none of those things. He might go tour the Hall of Fame one day. That's the only chance he's got to be in it. 66 across sites. He's got a 6.94 ERA, a 4.71 xFIP, a 20% strikeout rate against 5.5% walks. He has given up a 9.09% home run rate so far this season on a 14.6% barrel rate. That is eminently targetable. It's just you've got the Pirates to work with on the other side. What does that actually amount to? In his 3 starts, it amounts to the first start against Baltimore. He went 3 2/3, struck out 2, walked 1, gave up 2 earned on 6 hits. Came out and faced Miami, went 4 innings in the next start. Also gave up 2 earned on 4 hits, struck out 4, walked 1, gave up his first home run in that 9% home runs. The problem came in the next game. That was against the Athletics. He only went 4 innings. He gave up 5 earned runs on 6 hits, 4 of which were home runs. As I said, I think at some point, or maybe it was about a different pitcher who had a similar result, it's actually awfully difficult to only give up 5 earned runs on 4 home runs. There's something bizarrely impressive about that. He did strike out 5, but obviously not a good start. There's really not a lot to love. I don't know that necessarily, and you can see the home run model's not like flying off the handle based on this absurd 9.09. That's just small sample. 11 2/3, that amounts to 55 hitters faced, and he's given up 5 home runs. So that'll do that, but that should calm down. That is not to say that the Pirates are unplayable. They're quite playable here because they're pretty cheap. They're drawing a 3.97 implied total against Bloss, but feels like they got a little bit more upside, at least for DFS purposes, than that. Joshua Palacios in the leadoff spot has a 6.46 in the home run model. He's only hit 2 on the season in his 67 chances, 97 WRC plus. Looking back to last year, he did hit 10, stole 5 bases, 174 ISO, over 264 plate appearances. Not an ideal option, but he hits the ball fairly hard in his small samples. He's been low strikeout and high walk in his 67 chances this year. Last year, it was moderate strikeout, low walk. So a guy, if at worst, a guy who believably looks like a guy who will put the ball in play with a little bit of authority to start off a lineup against a kid who's definitely giving that kind of contact up. Not a bad option at 33-24 in the outfield. Brian Reynolds, one of your few key bats in this lineup, 5,200, 3,500. He's hit 18 home runs, tremendous slash line, creating runs 33% better than average. If you're going to the Pirates and you skip Brian Reynolds, you're out of your mind. O'Neal Cruz has a 19% barrel rate and 53.4% hard hits this year. It's resulted in 17 home runs, 216 ISO, 9 stolen bases, 112 WRC plus. Listen, he's not Ellie, but he's got a lot of similar skill set. He's got a lot more upside than even what we've seen in these 383 chances, and that's pretty good results so far. Easily your second highest priority Pirates bat, and not a problematic play at shortstop. Priority Pirates bat, problematic play. Not a bad quadruple alliteration in that sentence. 277 plate appearances out of Rowdy for just 31.29% probably playable. He's hit 9 home runs results-wise, a 151 ISO. Just created runs 96% better than average. Slashing 251, 303, 402. The contact is low. It's gone way down from where it was 2 years ago. It was down from last year's already diminished numbers. But the price has gone right along with it. So just buying the cheap lefty power upside against Jake Bloss, Rowdy's easily on the board. Joey Bart having a decent season, 6 home runs, 209 ISO, 122 WRC plus across 127 opportunities. He's hit the ball pretty hard. 3,000, 2,600, and not ideal. You could do better at catcher, but you could also probably do worse. Ke'Bryan Hayes, 35-24, disappointing season so far, just a .059 ISO, a 67 WRC plus, entirely skippable at third base. You don't necessarily want to occupy that position with that bat right now. Does still have a 42.5% hard hit, but that's greatly diminished over the last 2 years. The barrels from last year that had gone up have evaporated this year. It's been difficult. Ji-Hwan Bae back in the lineup. Hadn't noticed that. Over 34 opportunities this year. He hasn't given you anything at all. Over 371 last year. He stole 24 bases for you at least, but he was 34% worse than average creating runs. We welcome him back to the lineup. Jared Triolo, 23 across sites, multi-position across sites. Very, very skippable with a 272 on base, a 54 WRC plus. All he's supposed to do is get on base, maybe steal a bag every now and then and provide correlated scoring, and he can't even do that. Jasmine Grandal, mostly just here to catch the ball. Still stuck at 3 home runs, 2 of which came the first time I said he wasn't any good anymore. I think I've been proven right. So cue the 2 home run game. Astros lineup. My newest acquisition, Jose Altuve, leading off as usual. 14 home runs, 15 stolen bases. Going up against Paul Skeens is the only issue with the Astros today. They're a high-end team, especially through the top 5 of this lineup. But I just don't like the matchup. If you're going there, though, you're absolutely including Altuve from the first spot. You're including Alex Bregman, particularly for just 4,400 on DraftKings. 34 on FanDuel makes some sense. DraftKings doesn't look like they've caught up to the turn that we've seen from Alex Bregman over his last 200-ish plate appearances. 254, 316, 419 now. He's up to a 165 WRC plus. Just late last week, I feel like that was in the low 150s. 14 home runs now, 108 WRC plus. What did he do over the weekend? He must have had a good weekend. That'll do it. Home run on Friday, home run on Saturday. Those were his only 2 hits over the weekend, but that works. I knew that ISO had gone up a little. So Bregman, especially here, super playable. That has not caught up with his return to form. Jordan Alvarez, 54, 38, 20 home runs, 5 steals, a 238 ISO, 154 WRC plus. On a short list of maybe 5 hitters that I would want in a one-on-one gun to my head kind of a situation if they had to face Paul Skeens, Alvarez joins that list of I don't even know. I don't even want to say because what am I looking for? A base hit? Do I want Luis Arraez up there? Or do I want just Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani? Either way, Alvarez delivers along those lines. So do Judge and Ohtani. High average, high on base, tons of power. Love the bat. Gets more problematic starting in the 4 spot, but 4 and 5 are still very playable if you're choosing to target all that ownership on Skeens. It's just literally the worst pitcher in baseball to do that against, and I wouldn't recommend it. Even with him, 50+% owned, I just don't think it's a good idea to say, I'm going to target that big chunk of ownership. What's the blow-up scenario? He gives up 4. It's not going to pay off your stack. Jainer Diaz for 42.29. Very solid slash line, a 106 WRC plus with 9 home runs. Good investment at catcher, hits the ball pretty hard. Jeremy Pena doesn't hit the ball all that hard, but costs 4,000, 3,000 across sites. Has a good slash line, a 106 WRC plus, 9 homers, 12 steals. Decent filler at shortstop. John Singleton, skippable at first base, 8 home runs. Very nice, good for him. Jake Myers for 33.27 has 11 homers and 7 steals, a 103 WRC plus. Playable in the outfield, but not ideal, just a mix and match piece. Victor Caratini, a second catcher in the lineup, does have sneaky power upside. 5 home runs, over 123 plate appearances, carrying a 196 ISO on 8.2% barrels and 43.3% hard hits. And Caratini, I've mentioned this before, is always somebody to keep in mind when he creeps into a lineup like this, because everybody and their brother, if they're playing a catcher here, is going to Jainer Diaz. And Caratini, that pop is real. 44.7% hard hits 2 years ago. 43.5% last year and 43.5 2 years ago, and he's relatively low strikeout. So you're buying a fair shot at some high-end catcher power. 7 home runs in 226 chances last year, 9 home runs in 314 chances 2 years ago. Nobody here is saying that Victor Caratini is a good catcher or even, any kind of reliable power bat, but the power has been there this season. The output's been there even more than it's been over the past couple of seasons on an increased barrel rate in his small opportunities, and he costs nothing and he'll have no popularity. But he's facing Paul Skeens. And Mr. Cabbage at the bottom of the lineup. I assume it's pronounced cabbage. I don't know that I've ever actually heard a broadcaster say it. I just enjoy pronouncing it cabbage. 2,400 across sites. Hasn't given you much in 80 plate appearances. Wouldn't expect much from the bottom of the lineup against Paul Skeens. This goes Paul Skeens all the way up at the top. Pirates bats. Playable after that. And then Jake Bloss, I don't think so at 66. Too many cheap value options on the board. Astros bats, I don't really think so against Skeens, even against the ownership. Doesn't feel right. Royals in the Chi Sox, and then one more to round things out. Lubob in the lineup for the White Sox, but keep an eye on it coming up to game time. That is one of the biggest pieces on the trade block, so anything could happen. Some minor concern about coming out during the game even. If they get a phone call and advance a conversation in a hurry, that could just be, hey, call down to the dugout and tell him to pull him. He might be on the move. So in a lineup that I don't really want to go to anyway, their best player and biggest piece is at least a slight question mark, but it's good that he's at least in the lineup. Tommy Pham traded away from this team, one of their better bats all season. Pretty limited White Sox lineup going up against Alec Marsh. Marsh has a 4.75 ERA, a 4.20 xFIP, dead on league average for stuff by stuff plus. He's given up 41.1% hard hits and 90.3 miles an hour of exit velo on a 10.4% barrel rate. So, in terms of power upside against, over the number. He's managed just a 3.47% home run rate, which is good for that kind of contact. This could easily be up above 4. So he's made it work, but it seems like he's gotten through by the skin of his teeth on a little bit of luck here. 22.3% strikeouts is effective enough to throw at a 23.2% strikeout rate for this confirmed version of the White Sox lineup. 9.5% swinging strikes, 26.3% CSW. I don't think anybody is under the impression that Alec Marsh is particularly good. At best, he's a league average pitcher. That's basically exactly what he looks like, is like a league average pitcher who gives up a little bit too much premium contact. But against the worst team in baseball for 77.82, that makes it a different story. He's going to be popular at those prices because he's very, very playable against this team. This team has made a lot of pitchers look pretty good this year. My one issue with it is how popular he gets. I think he'll be your most popular cheapo SP2. RG's got Bloss more popular. I don't see that at all. He's cheaper. Looking at the RG DraftKings ownership numbers that we're not going to give away. They've got him. It's just a matter of like 2 percentage points. But they've got Bloss higher owned than Marsh and the highest owned among the sub 8K pitchers. I like basically all of them better than that. That's a weird one. I don't know that I don't think that ownership number is correct. Either way, Marsh is going to be popular. That said, it's not to unplayable levels, even on the SP2 slate, so fire away. No issues with it. Know that you're buying a very average pitcher against a very bad lineup, and the appeal is mostly based on that. That said, again, the White Sox are pulling a 4.20 implied total. 13.80 in the home run model for Lubob. Eloy Jimenez pushing his way up to 7.05. Even Andrew Vaughn at 8.25. And then down here, Paul DeJong at 8.37. So there's a little bit of individual power showing. The issue with the White Sox is just this atrocious ability to correlate and get on base. I'll take out the 125. That's a 283 average on base. It's pretty bad. Chris Flexen is just utterly unplayable. We laughed at it the last time we discovered it during the show, and then I was compelled to tweet it out because I thought it was so interesting. Among everybody who's thrown a pitch in baseball this season, not among qualified pitchers on innings or anything like that. Literally everybody who's thrown a pitch, it was, I want to say it was like 26 guys, only half of whom had even been ranked by Stuff Plus, that had worse Stuff Plus marks than that 51.8. And every single one of those guys was a position player who had thrown 4 innings or less. And there were position players like Aaron Hicks, whose Stuff Plus rating ranked out higher than Chris Flexen. Would that maintain if you gave Aaron Hicks 106 and a third innings? I don't know, maybe. This is a very pathetically, unplayably low rating for his pitch arsenal, and that's why it results in a 5.25 ERA, a 5.14 xFIP, an elevated walk rate, a terrible strikeout rate. He's a bad pitcher, guys. It's very, very targetable. There's a reason that the Royals are the highest implied total on the slate at 5.41, one of 2 teams over 5. So let's get into the Royals bats. They continue to struggle with this leadoff spot. Now we've got Michael Massey, who I actually do think is a good fit up there, maybe. And it's not based on this season, obviously. We're at a 275 on base for Massey. So they continue to struggle finding guys who could fit that role. And actually, he was 274 over 461 chances last year. I thought he had a better on base last year. So that continues to be the wrong choice in the leadoff spot for the Royals, basically no matter who they put there. But Massey will be there today. Maybe you pick up some correlated scoring. He is a good bat, very low strikeout, doesn't draw many walks, hits the ball fairly effectively. So I like the option in the leadoff spot for 26 at second base, 4,000 at second base. I feel like he'll get popular given that leadoff spot in the highest implied total team, but deservedly so. 64-43 for Bobby Witt, just absolutely tremendous. 18 homers, 23 steals, 244 ISO, 65% better than average for runs. Top shortstop on the board. Vinny, another one of my new acquisitions, 4,700, 2,900, 11 home runs on the season, 162 ISO. I started Eugenio Suarez in that corner infield spot today, but Vinny was the other really strong candidate with these 3 matchup against the White Sox. Really love Vinny's bat. I've been talking about it all year. It's one of the reasons I wanted to acquire him. Low strikeout, drawing a decent walk rate, but just puts a ton of balls in play with the ability to hit it very hard. He stings the ball, 44.5% hard hits. He's hit 11 home runs, a 162 ISO, and just upward trajectory from here for average on base ISO. Sal Perez, 49, 3,000 across sites, 19 home runs for Sal. Tremendous catcher option, always has been. Hunter Renfroe for 34, 27, up to 10 home runs, 172 ISO, at league average now for run creation. Showing signs of life compared to where he was earlier in the season, maintaining a very quality low strikeout number with a 9.6% walk, so it gets him involved a little bit. 313 on base is not great, but it's one of the better marks on this team. 257 on base out of the next guy, MJ Melendez, who, again, another guy who makes just very high-end contact, but struggles to actually connect with any kind of regularity, struggles to actually deliver on the quality contact. 9.3% barrels, 42.5% hard hits from a cheap lefty bat against Chris Flexen, though. Very interesting to me. 11 home runs against a 193, 257, 387 slash line, 25% worse than average for run creation, but a 193 ISO. Freddie Fermin continuing to get on base effectively, 344 on base. I've said it a bunch of times. When he's in the lineup, he should probably be the leadoff man. I don't care if he's slow. I don't know how fast he is. He's a backup catcher. How fast could he be? But what I care about, and this is the reason I want to have Nathaniel Lowe in my leadoff spot, whether I'm the Rangers or the Yankees, quite honestly. I just care about a guy getting on base. 35th percentile run speed for Freddie Fermin. But a great on-base percentage and the strongest non-Bobby Witt on-base percentage on this team. When he's in the lineup, he should be leading off. Michael Garcia for 43, 29, 6 home runs, 23 steals. Couldn't hold down the leadoff spot. 285 on base, 74 WRC+. It's a mix-and-match caliber with a fairly big ceiling, especially compared to the other mix-and-match second base, third base from the bottom of the lineup types. It's got a big ceiling still. Kyle Isbell, 3,000, 2,700, mix and match quality. 7 home runs, 7 steals, and 84 WRC+. Garcia's got the bigger ceiling between the two. If you're going to the White Sox, even with any kind of doubt about does he play the full game, Luis Robert still your top priority guy. 12 home runs, 13 steals, a 13.8 in the home run model. That's over 220 plate appearances, by the way. 230 ISO. He's an absolute monster. Nicky Lopez is just a contact and on-base hitter, and he's not really doing that well this season. Andrew Vaughn does have 11 home runs, a 142 ISO, and 86 WRC+. He's probably your priority 3 hitter in this lineup. Gavin Sheets, 32-25 across sites, 7 homers in 340 chances, not really making good contact. Doesn't strike out a ton. I'll give him that much, 20.9% strikeouts and 10.3% walks. He's okay if you need a 5th man from the White Sox, or I guess a 4th man from the White Sox. 4th priority hitter. Eloy Jimenez slots in as your second priority guy above Vaughn, between Vaughn and Robert. 3,600, 2,700. He's got 5 home runs and 3 steals in 245 chances. A 102 ISO, a 78 WRC+. This is the worst extended stretch I can remember from Eloy Jimenez. There is major talent lurking in there somewhere. You can see some of it in the contact profile. 10.1% barrels, 50.3% hard hits. I have no issues going like 1, 2, 3 as a small stack against Alec Marsh in some spots, especially if Marsh's ownership spikes up to where I expected, or if they've got him higher on other sites. It's an issue if you want to get out to a 5-man White Sox, because I don't like Nicky Lopez off the top. Gavin Sheets is a playable 4, but then you're looking at Benintendi, Brooks Baldwin. I'd rather have Paul DeJong, but now you've got a bigger dip down to the 8 spot and fewer plate appearances to work with from the home team. Not great. Benintendi's been completely lost this year. 199, 255 takes away any effectiveness that he might have provided. Brooks Baldwin, over 34 chances, hasn't really done anything yet. 2 stolen bases, but supposed to be able to contribute a little bit. DeJong has his 18 home runs and not much else, but a 204 ISO is compelling late in the lineup against a pitcher, again, giving up a lot of premium contact. And then Chucky Robinson is a mix-and-match catcher option. This is extremely Royals bats, favored above everything else. And then some Alec Marsh. I think he's fair in the mid-range. I think he's fairly priced and has upside, but I do think he'll be a little bit more popular where RG has him. And then some mini stacks of White Sox, or maybe some one-offs, if that. Last game up, Nats, Diamondbacks. We do have the D-backs. Did they confirm that Reds lineup? I haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen the Reds confirmed, but it looked like it changed on Labs, and somebody mentioned no Ellie. Somebody in chat, I think, said no Ellie. Tizzleman says the Sox got some Priester dude and you guys are going after Flaherty. Feels bad, man. Priester's actually interesting. He was a fairly high-end rated prospect in coming up through the Pirate system. I want to say pretty good fastball and a plus changeup, I believe, was the profile. Didn't really connect at the major league level yet, but has interesting stuff. Sinker slider. I thought he had a change. Was I wrong about that? Yeah, I guess he's been more sinker slider, it looks like, in the show. I really thought he had a... Now I'm curious. Where is my... There it is. Yeah, that change doesn't grade out at all. Well, has some work to do. He's no Jack Flaherty yet. I don't know who I was thinking of with that profile, though. but that wasn't him. But was everything I said about him as a prospect was right. I was just wrong about the pitch. Monty asks, Tara, what percent ownership is Skeens a no-go, or even 8 games is extreme high ownership not a worry? So, like I said, with him trending for 50-plus on DK and into the mid-30s on FanDuel, I think it is a spot where the undercut is probably warranted, or at least worth considering. Flat no-go is never. Right, he would still be if I could have him, if I could afford him in one lineup, he would be my choice, regardless of ownership. I'll just get different with bats. That said, with the bats that I actually want to get to, I almost definitely in my one lineup will not be playing Paul Skeens. But that's not out of a desire to fade Skeens. If I could afford him, I would use him. So it's just a matter of how he fits into the pricing paradigm there. But there is no real ownership number where you'd say just take him right out. Unless, maybe if he was coming in like NBA backup point guard into the starting lineup for min price type numbers where it's like 90%, then maybe you're obviously justified in an undercut because baseball doesn't work like basketball does that way. So maybe then you would say, all right, I'm considering much more of a full fade here because I'll let 90% of the field have Skeens and I'll take my shots with everybody else against that, and I gain so much leverage. So it is more of like a leverage question, and where that trigger actually is kind of in that territory, 80+% probably. It's very high with that pitcher just because of and especially it also depends somewhat on the slate around him, right? Where everybody else is priced relative to him and what their various ceilings look like. And on a short slate like today, where there's 3 other high-end pitchers, but only one of them is in a good matchup, and his ownership won't be all that offset from Skeens's. So I think with those factors added onto it, it just leans into just go along with it, get different elsewhere kind of a thing. But the undercut, to me, is at least worth considering here. I agree, Colin. I think Palacios leading off for Pittsburgh is interesting there. Mets stack in DraftKings single entry, asks Clint Wood. Forget where they ranked out on my stacks board. I don't hate it. I just feel like they're expensive, so they're not going to be maybe your best investment as far as your second stack there or your pitcher. Yeah, they're kind of like middle of the board projections-wise with bad value numbers. I think they're playable. Don't get me wrong. I like that top end of that Mets lineup. But it just depends on what you can get with them, I would think. I think they're one of the more limiting stacks in some ways to get to. Travis Wyndham says Skeens is going to get dinged up at some point. I have no idea when or who, but it's inevitable. Yeah, I mean, he's not going to go through his entire career not having given up more than, I don't know what the current high is, 4 or 5 runs. As the famous baseball adage goes, you make 30 starts a year, 10 of them are going to be great, 10 of them are going to be crap, and it's the 10 in the middle that decide whether you make the Hall of Fame or whether you're a 5th starter. But there are guys who are somewhat exceptions to that, where it's more like you start 30 games and 15 of them are great, 5 of them are really, really good, 5 of them are not totally great, and then the other 5 are what decides, did you have a Cy Young season or just finish as one of the top pitchers in baseball? That's more the trajectory that Skeens is on. Thus far, has not given up more than 3 earned runs. I forgot I actually had his game log handy. He's just that good. He really is. But yeah, at some point he's going to get got. No doubt about it. Happens to the best of them. Last game up does not feature anything like the best of them in terms of pitching. 64-84 from Mitchell Parker, 20.4% strikeout rate, a 4.34 xFIP, a 4.34 ERA, 4.01 xFIP, limited strike throwing numbers, limited strike output. 6% walk is pretty good, but a 1.21 whip. He's putting guys on base. Seems pretty hittable. Manageable, but not great for home runs. Manageable just under the margins for premium contact across the board. Pushing a little bit of power toward Christian Walker at 9.76, Ketel Marte at 9.43. Some of the other guys in the mix there for some home run upside. No Jock Peterson against the lefty. Takes this lineup down a peg from where they are against righties. But I don't think it's a reason to rush out and play Mitchell Parker. That said, at 64 on DK, he's slightly in the mix. If you need to get cheaper than Woods Richardson, cheaper than Colin Ray as 2 bargain bin guys, I'd probably just go to the $4,000 option and Grant Holmes there. The Diamondbacks are decent against lefties, but 64 is interesting enough, just barely good enough to pay that off. 84 on FanDuel, I don't think we're going there. Talking about a 1-5 strikeout pitcher. Oh, that's right. He's also on this bad run. I forgot about that. Parker in his last 2 starts, 3 innings in the last one, gave up 6 earned runs on 7 hits to the Pods, struck out 5, walked 3. Went just 2/3 of an inning, gave up 5 runs on 3 hits, 2 strikeouts, 2 walks against Milwaukee. Just melted down in that one, didn't get out of the first. Had been on an okay stretch over that, but it's somewhat deceptive. It's just like, completed a fair amount of innings. 4 out of 5 starts, he went at least 6, including a 7-inning start. But in 2 of those, he gave up 5 earned runs, 4 earned runs. And then in the start before that stretch, he gave up 4 unearned runs in 4 2/3. Limited strikeout output. I just greatly prefer the Diamondback side of that equation. But I guess as a value dart, the lowest end of the bargain bin, you can consider it there. Jordan Montgomery, I just don't think is worth considering. Nationals are good enough, and they take a little bit of an uptick against left-handed pitching most of the time anyway, and he's just been completely terrible. 6.11 ERA against a 4.62 xFIP. Even with that difference between the two, that's still an elevated xFIP. 14.9% strikeout rate against 7.6% walks. It's inducing a fair 11% swinging strike rate, but he's not throwing nearly enough strikes, giving up a little bit of premium contact. I don't like the spot. At this point, I don't like the pitcher for DFS, even at a cheap price. It's just really difficult to trust. He's the bottom of the barrel today. So I'm drawing some shares of Nationals bats on this side. Still no lineup. Let's pull up the, since we got a minute or two here. Oops. Looking at Nats versus lefties. We had that theme last year. This year it wasn't as pronounced. Still just a 96 WRC plus against lefties, slashing 264, 319, 374. Very low strikeout in the split, though. 17.9% strikeout rate is the 4th lowest in baseball. Pods, Royals, Astros, and then these Nats. Man for man, we're looking at CJ from the leadoff spot. Greatly improved, which is a key thing for them against left-handed pitching. Last year, it was a real struggle for him. This year, in 132 plate appearances, slashing 289, 348, 463, creating runs 28% better than average against same-handed pitching. 3 of his 15 home runs, 5 of his 19 stolen bases have come on this side of the split. He's been very, very good in this side. Absolutely a killer way to start off a national stack, 54-32 across sites. Probably won't be that popular. Definitely in consideration. Lane Thomas spent most of last year being very effective against lefties. Had a great year last year. He's having an okay year this year. He's slashing 253, 331, 407, a 108 WRC plus, 8 homers, 28 steals in 341 chances. And against lefties, he's excelled. 326, 410, 512, created runs 60% better than average so far. 3 of his home runs and 11 of his stolen bases. Juan Yepez, holding down first base on a daily basis for this team now, has been mashing over 81 plate appearances. 361, 407, 583. He's created runs 73% better than average. 8.1% barrels, a 14.8% strikeout rate. Only 19 of those chances have come against lefties, but he's slashing 412, 474, 588 in those chances, creating runs 99% better than average. Obviously, very small sample, being a bit facetious there. But this is a kid that over time we've played against lefties as well. In those times when he was platooning for St. Louis, it was definitely a guy that you could target against left-handed pitching. For his career, 4 home runs in 120 chances against lefties, 12 home runs in 300 chances against righties. Better hitter, actually, against righties in more opportunities. But shows some quality power upside against lefties. I like him at the very, very cheap price, and I have no issue slotting him in at first on DraftKings. I would probably put him in the outfield on FanDuel, but it also depends on what I'm combining them with. Harold Ramirez, good line drive hitter, 280, 295, 341. Not getting on base enough to support a good run creation mark. Doesn't really strike out, doesn't really draw a walk. Typically in years past has been more of a 40% hard hit guy. This year just 33.7. Has limited the output, but there is quality there for the money. He's very, very cheap across sites, especially if he's hitting cleanup. James Wood, 41.29. Against left-handed pitching so far, he has made 44 plate appearances. He's slashing 220, 273, 317. One of his home runs. We will see if we get him. I imagine he'll be in the lineup, but probably a little bit deprioritized, but still a tremendous rookie. Keibert Ruiz, 3,300, 2,500. Makes a ton of contact. Doesn't really deliver a lot so far this season. He does have 8 home runs in 293 chances. Against lefties, Keibert is at 203, 243, 304 in 74 chances this year. It's been pretty bad. Ilimaro Vargas, Trey Lipscomb, and Jacob Young rounding things out. Young is slashing 303, 380, 382 with a 121 WRC plus in 100 plate appearances against left-handed pitching this year, and he's got 13 of his 26 stolen bases, so effectively half of his stolen bases in 1/3 of the plate appearances. Again, 100 plate appearances out of 334, so he excels against lefties. That's really interesting. Pretty compelling wraparound play from the bottom of the lineup if you're considering Nats for just 34-26 in the outfield. Lipscomb has been bad against lefties in 64 plate appearances this year, and Ilimaro Vargas, 299, 349, 416, and his created run 17% better than average, but doesn't hit for a lot of power. Just a low strikeout potential other wraparound type, but not in a great spot to do that. Kind of intrigued by the Jake Young option at the bottom of the lineup. Michael Knack says Yepez is a lock. I like Yepez a lot. On the Diamondback side, usual suspects. Although we do get Gabriel Moreno sliding into the 2 spot like that for 3,400, 2,800 against a weak lefty. That's a really appealing spot. He's up to 254, 341, 371, a 103 WRC plus. Limited in the power department this year, just 4 home runs, a 117 ISO over 293 chances. But that comes on 6.5% barrels and 41.2% hard hits. The hard hits are roughly in line with last year, and the barrels are up. Low strikeout, high walk. This is a really interesting catcher in the second spot. Marte has 23 home runs. He's one of the best second basemen in baseball this year. 10.9% barrels, 53.1% hard hits, a 239 ISO. Created runs 46% better than average so far. Killer opportunity for him. Lourdes Gurriel for 42, 3,000 is interesting. 14 home runs. A 267 average is respectable. 295 on base, not so much. 151 ISO, limited. 98 WRC plus is 2 points below average. But he's a better hitter than that. Somewhere in there, he does have power from the right side, does hit the ball pretty hard. He's effectively priced, if nothing else, for this weird limited output that he's had. Christian Walker at 53.36, a little bit of a discount if you're asking me, by a couple $100 on both sites. 23 home runs at 223 ISO, 126 WRC plus. Second or first priority bat in this lineup, depending on how you rank him and Ketel Marte. Randall Grichuk for 32.25 against the lefty, no issues with it, but just kind of a shot at maybe a couple of doubles. On the right day, maybe you get a home run out of him, but three homers, a 150 ISO in 177 chances. You're just getting a cheap right-handed bat in the outfield there, and there's a lot of outfielders on this slate that I want to play. Jake McCarthy, 38.27 from the left side, gives you a little bit of on base with a 366 on base, a little bit of correlated scoring, 118 WRC plus, 14 stolen bases for your money. Lefty, hitting behind a righty who's cheaper in the same position. Probably just defer to Grichuk if I'm looking at that. Junior Suarez has been on a tear over the last month or so. 13 home runs. Still really limited in the slash line, but up to 218, 300, 382, a 164 ISO, 9.4% barrels. Starting to look a little bit more like the old Junior Suarez in the power department, and that's really all we were ever buying him for. So I'm a buyer at 36.31, more specifically at 36 on DraftKings. That is a very cheap price. Alek Thomas, Geraldo Perdomo, just kind of mix and match pieces at the bottom of the lineup. Neither one has been particularly good or particularly playable this season. I'm going to put the Nationals on top of the Diamondbacks bats. Nah, I can't do that. Not with a full run higher on the Vegas board. Diamondbacks, then the Nationals. Nationals are closer than Vegas thinks they are. How about that? And neither pitcher for me in this game. Mitch Parker is the one spot on DraftKings that I think is moderately playable. But even that, I think, is a stretch. And we'll break that down one more time. That's where he lands on this one. That's where his opponent lands. Bottom of the board doesn't look all that playable for Jordan Montgomery to me. I think you could get away with Mitch Parker on DraftKings, but if you roll it 100 times, you're probably getting away with it like 10 to 18 times at most. No, not even that. 10 to 12 times, which is probably worth doing a few times. Top of the board, Paul Skeens going up against the Astros. Look, as somebody was saying, as Travis was saying, he's going to get got at some point. And among all the teams in baseball, I said among all the hitters in baseball, Jordan Alvarez would be one of my 5 choices if I needed to deliver against Skeens. And there's some other good players in that lineup. They're a low strikeout. They're a fearsome opponent. So out of the teams he's faced, they could push him for sure. But he's just unbelievably, probably as a rookie who's made 12 starts, already the best pitcher in baseball. He is that good. Evaldi against St. Louis, 10-4, 9,300, easy to play. Don't mind the matchup. Like him at low ownership. Better on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel for the price, but a good and believable enough spot for him. Logan Gilbert, definitely playable. He's just very high priced. 600 less than Skeens, but facing Boston in Fenway, not ideal. 900 less on DraftKings, facing Boston in Fenway, not ideal. But again, more than enough talent to beat that Red Sox team, hold them down, find some strikeouts against them, and come away with a winning day. Pivetta on the other side of that same matchup is going to get very popular. 9,400, he's offset price-wise from the other top-end pitchers on the slate. 8,500, same thing on the DraftKings board. And he's got the easiest matchup by far among those top 4 pitchers. So tons of reason to believe that Nick Pivetta is going to succeed, but a lot of people are going to have him in their lineups. Right, Mountcastle home run on the first day. I don't have him anymore. That was a tough one to part with. Alec Marsh, again, just mediocre, mid-grade, average type pitcher, just facing the easiest matchup in baseball at a fair price. 82.77. You can get a little ceiling on top of these medium projections from him, but he's not invulnerable on the mound. They're pulling a 4.2 total against, so know that you're not buying much safety. It's just the best matchup on the board. Woods Richardson, I really like on DraftKings, 6,700. That is highly, highly playable spot. He's been effective enough in spots. It's just a dangerous Mets lineup on the other side of it, but that's cooked into that price. 91 on FanDuel is a totally different story. Jameson Taillon, I think, is wholly unplayable. How they arrived at 97 for him against Cincinnati in Cincinnati when Pivetta cost 94 against Seattle was a much better pitcher, much better results this year, much better everything. It's completely beyond me. 8,100 on DraftKings is more on the board, but it's like a don't need it kind of a spot. I'd rather go to one of these for more value. I just don't see it. Colin Ray, I could see succeeding against Atlanta. There are strikeouts in that lineup. He's got to avoid the long ball, but he's done that fairly effectively this year. 6,900, I think, is highly playable as an SP2 option. I do like Woods Richardson probably a little bit better for 200 less and a better projection, but Ray's on the board there. 89 on FanDuel feels like a stretch. Quintana for 86 on FanDuel also feels like a stretch, but we've seen him deliver. 6 innings of low strikeout performance and a quality start. You're probably not correctly priced for that. Even if he was like 82 like Marsh, let alone if he was in the 7s, I'd be more interested. 86 doesn't feel right. 74 on DraftKings, it's similar, but the win bonus is easier for him to acquire. I think he's more playable on DraftKings, but again, doesn't necessarily align with several guys below 7,000 that are compelling. 4,000 for Grant Holmes against Milwaukee. Give me 4 innings. I think that's quality enough. You've got the upside to 5 since he's making the full start. I don't think you're going there at 55 on FanDuel. Probably not enough juice, not enough legs to the quality start for sure. Limited on FanDuel. But this is interesting. And I mean, the 55 relative to the FanDuel pricing is kind of the same play. It's just that extra bonus that they kick in on FanDuel. I don't know what the strikeout upside looks like. I feel like there's more downside on FanDuel than there is for the 4,000 on DraftKings. Parker, we talked about. Spears is basically a no for me. Just another guy that falls kind of by the wayside based on where he's priced. Wouldn't knock me out of my chair if he put, a mid-grade ceiling on these numbers, but I don't think he's a slate winner. Jake Bloss, again, especially if he's going to be the most popular value pitcher on the slate at 6,600, I will 100 times out of 100 take either Woods Richardson, Holmes, Parker. I'll throw Quintana into that mix. Colin Ray for sure. I like all of those guys better than I like Jake Bloss against the Pirates. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't think I am. Andre Palante is a no for me. Chris Flexen is an extreme no. And Jordan Montgomery is a no. Flexen should actually be the bottom of the board. I feel bad for Jordan Montgomery. If we were sorted by FanDuel, it would be correct. That is your slate in a nutshell, you guys. Up, down, top, bottom, side to side. Here's your home run board one last time. Going to see some Braves up there for sure. Riley, Olsen, Ozuna, all above the magic number in that spot against Colin Ray. It's just a matter of, again, with their terrible on base and correlated scoring skills this year and sequencing, what else do the Braves give you? I believe there's a home run or two coming. I just don't know what else there is. And I'm intrigued enough to consider Colin Ray on the other side of it. Lou Bob, the only White Sox worth playing, and might not play out the full game if they trade him Deering. We'll see what happens there. Cal Raleigh showing a little bit of power upside. Tyler Locklear not in the game, but he's showing some power later in that lineup. Rosarena at 8.17. The Mariners showing a little bit of upside for power in that both-sided game or all four sides game in Boston. Devers and Tyler O'Neill pulling down pretty solid power marks. Everybody from KC is interesting. Right? Basically their entire top half. There's Bobby Witt. There's Sal Perez. There's Mike Massey. There's Vinny. That's a pretty solid little four-man. They're just going to be really popular with the highest run total on the board. Sounds like Ellie's not playing, but you get Jimmer Candelario there from another lineup that should be pretty popular. Anyway, 6:14. I almost called it 6.14. 6.14 on the clock. Let me punch out of here and get everything updated up on the site. We'll be back for what I'm sure is a big slate tomorrow on a Tuesday, as usual. Probably a 12-gamer, 12 to... have we had a 15-gamer? I think we capped at 14 this year. I don't think we've hit a 15-gamer. But it'll be a big slate tomorrow, I'm sure. We'll be back to break it down all over the place. Hit the like button for me if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe bell for you if you haven't already, so you know when these shows go live, especially as we plow into football season over the next few weeks. Check out our pals over at acemind.io. Check out rotoscouts.com for all your needs for all this data. It'll be updated in the next few minutes. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle. Drink Pepsi. Go see Deadpool in theaters. What else? Don't fly Delta. This show brought to you by our new sponsor, Delta Airlines. Oh no. Stealing a Krusty the Clown joke. All right, guys, that's it from me. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. I'll see you tomorrow.